Yes, week 7 in the books, meaning we are officially more than halfway through the Big Ten regular season in 2023. Welcome inside the Monday Coaches Press Conference edition of Big Ten Live. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo. And as we get set for the second half of the season, some monster matchups coming up this weekend. 3 teams in the East, all still unbeaten and all still part of the college football playoff conversation. You will hear from the coaches of some of those teams coming up later today, beginning with Jim Harbaugh and the unbeaten second-ranked Michigan Wolverines. Also hear from Harlon Barnett following Michigan State's heartbreaking loss to Rutgers. PJ Fleck, Luke Fickell, Tom Allen, Greg Schiano, David Braun, Bret, Bielema, and Matt Rhule, all on the Monday menu. We do begin with Michigan. Wolverines continue to look like the best team in the country. Indiana scored first, and then Michigan ran off 52 straight. Wolverines have now won their first 7 games by 24 points or more for the first time in more than a century. The last Wolverine program to pull that off was way back in 1904. Coming up this weekend, it is a road trip to a struggling Michigan State team, though the battle for the Mitten State always a little bit closer than expected. Win that one, then you have some time off before getting set for Purdue, Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State in the month of November. Let's take you to Ann Arbor. Here is Michigan headman Jim Harbaugh.
Good. Thanks for coming early. School's not in session today, so we get to move things up a bit. Don't have to wait till classes to get out. So it's an exciting morning.
We'll start with Larry over here on the right.
Jim, what do you say or do to prepare your players to just play football and not get into the extracurriculars, especially with the way, last year ended in the tunnel and whatnot, a lot of emotions?
Yeah, every week is a new week. I think maybe some have the perception that, well, because you did something last week or the week before, or a game went a certain way, that it's going to go exactly that way. It's definitely football it's a puzzle each week. New fronts, new coverages, new plays, new schemes, offensively, defensively, special teams, and you put that puzzle together. That's what we're doing now in preparation in terms of our plan. Then we'll practice it and look to execute it on Saturday.
Dennis?
Jim, where's the line with JJ in terms of him keeping the ball and running it? What are those? Like he took a pretty big shot. It looked like he liked it on Saturday. What's the line with him running the ball? Can he call his own number anytime he wants?
The line, the question's not resonating. What line are you referring to?
The ability for him to run the ball when he wants to make the call his own number, he can do that at any time?
What plays being called, those come from the sideline. There are QB-driven plays that we run where the quarterback has an option to hand the ball off or keep and pull the ball. Are you referring to that?
I'm referring to that. He took a pretty big shot there.
Scramble, window scramble, or?
I don't know. It looked like he just
Something over the middle.
took a pretty big shot.
Trying to get extra yards.
You guys were up pretty big on Saturday. And
Yeah.
Before he lowered his shoulder and went in there. I mean, you're all right with all that?
Am I all right with JJ? Yeah, I am. I think he's – actually, I feel like I stand corrected from what I said, what I've been saying the last several months, which is I think JJ's a once-in-a-generation quarterback. JJ has shown to be on path to be the best quarterback in Michigan history. And the statistics, I'm sure, speak to that. And the statistic that speaks to it the most is amount of drives. He's had 213 drives. We've scored on 130 of those drives. 96 have been touchdowns, 34 field goals, 61%. So it's really remarkable. There's no statistic that demonstrates the quality of quarterback play more than that statistic in my mind.
Isaiah.
Michigan State doesn't have the best record, but they've played a lot of teams tough. What do you see from them on film?
And, just to follow up too, And I think going forward, JJ will be the quarterback that all future quarterbacks are compared to. Sorry.
Michigan State doesn't have the best record this year, but they played a lot of teams tough. What do you see from them on film?
Yeah, super tough. As evidence, this past week. I mean, I think it's a tough team. I think Coach Barnett's got them playing really well and got them on the move, and it's for the state championship game. We expect one heck of a football game and get prepared for it.
Chris?
You touched on a little bit about what Chris Partridge has done with the linebackers. Can you talk about the impact that he's had on Mike Barrett and his relationship?
Yeah. What can I tell you about Mike Barrett? It's outstanding. His level of play is lights out. He was a guardian of victory in this past game and game ball. But the overall play has just been outstanding. Junior Colson as well. Junior 6 tackles in this game. His level of just consistently good has been tremendous. Chris has had a huge impact on our linebacker group. And he's a great coach. He has a huge impact on special teams as well. Just a great coach and good guy.
We haven't seen Jimmy Rhule. I meant to ask about him last week. Is something wrong with him? Is he banged up?
No, he did not redshirt last year, and so we have a year that we're really attempting and pulling off. Really is to play Jimmy in the 4 games and get that year back for Jimmy. So a redshirt doesn't have to be just in the freshman year.
On the right, John?
Ben Hall had a nice breakout game on Saturday and led the team in rushing. What has his ascension meant for you guys? It's been good. I mean, go back to as a mid-year enrollee, spring game. He was tremendous. He's been tremendous. He got slowed up a little bit. Was working through something, but now he's back. You just have to look at him from behind, and the legs, the posterior chain, the quads, the calves, and to understand how he can. There could be a 280, 90-pound guy, on his, jumping on his back to make a tackle, and he continues on for another 3 or 4 yards. But that's how he's able to do it. Tremendous leg strength and drive, and he's got that. He's got the vision, the balance, and the speed and the running instincts to be a real great running back.
On the left, Tony?
Yeah, Jim, last year, when the game ended, clearly a lot of emotion. You had a lot of emotion. You were asked about that a little bit earlier today. Now I wonder, has enough time passed maybe where you set that emotion aside, or I guess, how do you feel?
How do I feel about it?
Going into this game?
That seems like a long time ago. I like what JJ said maybe last week, or it's a goldfish mentality. So it's onward.
On the left, Ryan?
Jim, since your time there, how much do you think the success on the field in this rivalry has had an impact in recruiting against Michigan State in those head-to-head battles?
I don't know the exact amount. Sure it does. Winning and helps recruiting. I've noticed.
We have a question in the back right at the camera.
So we're a little over halfway over the regular season, and of course this is a big rivalry game. So do you give any advice to your players about pressure, if there is any, and how do you remain undefeated going into this game?
Yeah, I mean these are huge games every single week. I mean it's there's definitely a November mentality. That's when you're in a chase for the championship, you're in a run for the championship. They're decided in November. If you've put yourself in position to be in position. So yeah, when all the leaves are brown and the skies are gray, that's when the championships get decided. But November's here for us. It's here for us now. Playing in this big game, this big rivalry game, this in-state game, this Big Ten game, and then we'll have a bye, and then the rest of our games will be in November. So it's the time is now.
On the right, Zach.
Blake seems to have really perfected those 1 and 2 yard goal line runs, even when opposing defense is kind of expecting to get the ball. What's he done to be so good at that, and how valuable is that to your goal line offense?
Yeah, I'd say, just look at him from behind as well, that leg drive, that low center of the gravity, that balance, that initial burst too. Like the great ones I've noticed can get up to full speed quicker, just real fast. I would say with Blake, it's either 3 or 4 steps to where he's up to full speed, and that's you can't get to full speed much faster. I've noticed, and he's able to do it.
On the left, Aaron.
Jim, you praised your assistant coaches on Saturday, talking JJ up from a 30,000-foot view. Is this program as good as it's been since you've been here?
Yeah, I don't think that'd be going out on a limb.
Larry?
What'd you think of Hauser, Michigan State's new starting quarterback?
He did some really good things. Was impressed, and very young guy making his first start. It was most impressive performance.
On the left, Isaiah.
Kalel Mullings was out this last week. Do you have an update on where he's at, and is he going to be available anytime soon, to your knowledge?
Soon.
On the right here, Rhino.
Yeah, how much is the understanding of the system, especially in year 3, of the defensive system contributed to the increase in turnovers, and conversely, obviously the offense kind of going back to, your bread and butter these past 3 years, contributed to the lack of penalties and just, strong execution across the board?
I think, I agree. I think don't argue with that at all. Actually agree that the defensive system has stayed intact. It was brought here, Mike McDonald, but Mike and Jesse, we're at the Ravens together. And then when Jesse came, it was very similar. Not exact. Each have put their own twists on it. Jesse definitely more from a secondary perspective, and I think our secondary is playing, as well as it ever has, or maybe it's on path to be the best we've had. But it's the structure, many of the calls are the same. There's a simplicity to it that makes it very complicated for the offense, and it allows the players to really be put in position to be successful. And there's a lot of answers, and so I think that's definitely a contributing factor.
How about on the offense also? How much does the stability there allowed the players to kind of maybe hone in on certain things and be able to kind of add more to the arsenal over time, and be able to kind of modify and maybe improve over the course of
Yeah, I would agree. You know, as pointed out after the Saturday ball game, it's you know, the coaching, the way they work, you know, the collaborativeness, the camaraderie, the leadership by Sharon Moore. You know, has been consistent, been outstanding, and you know he's doing that, and he's calling the plays, he's coaching the offensive line, coordinating the offense. I mean, I know that players appreciate it. I appreciate it, and you know, I'm sure the Michigan faithful appreciate it, and we're lucky. He's done a tremendous job.
Alejandra? Jim, it seemed like the team had some struggles in the college football playoff game playing on a natural surface for the first time all year against TCU going into a grass game. Do you take any lessons from the TCU game, do anything differently?
We're going to practice on grass this week. And yeah, we've had success on grass. You know, in the last game we lost was on grass. It's about the only thing different to do is not going to be anything different. We're going to prepare to practice on the grass like we've done in the past. I think it's the best we can do. You know.
In the back there?
What do you have to say about this 3-year stretch of playing really solid football?
It's been a happy mission. Thing I've noticed the most, the guys play for each other, and so do the coaches. I mean, I think it'd be any sports team, any sports organization, any business, you know, would probably kill for the kind of culture and vibe that we enjoy on a daily basis.
Got time for 2 more. We'll start with Chris on the left.
I understand it's about 2023, obviously. I mean, when the 24 schedule was announced, did that excite you a little bit? Did you even think about it? Or were you still caught up in the moment that you didn't even really give much thought?
Just glanced at it, and I couldn't repeat it to you right now. Yeah, it's really seems exciting. Yeah.
Nothing else?
Cool.
On a similar vein, Jim, I know you guys try to take things one game at a time very consistently, but have you thought?
And we kind of take the try out of that. We just do it. We just.
But you are at 996 wins. You're 4 wins away from becoming the first program to hit the millennium mark. Have you given any thought to what that would mean for this program, and is that a motivator for your team?
Yeah, we give that thought. We do give that thought. I mean, if anything's, maybe Brad, when we do our post game or post press conference chat, we'll show you. We keep track of them. We have a big scoreboard up there of the amount of wins. Be happy to show that to y'all. And yeah, things to do, because I mean that's a culmination of 144 years of Michigan football. You know, no team has won more. We'll be the first, you know, to get to 1,000. God willing, and the creek don't rise. And then, you know, what ways to honor that? What ways to celebrate that? You know, I've come up with a lot of ideas. You know that we want to do. One of them is to I want to get an M ring to every coach that's coached here a certain amount of years. You know, 5 years, maybe 7, maybe. And staff, same thing. Maybe a number, criteria number, where they're here so long, but just so much has been contributed. You know, from Yost to you know to where we are now, that and all in between. There's so many things that make the little hair on my arm stand up that we want to do. I love the gotten some ideas from just different people that I've talked to. I can't take credit for the ideas, but you know, what if? I mean, maybe like in the end zone, there was Michigan was spelled with a 1G instead of an IG. You know, the M, you know, that's a Roman numeral for 1,000. There'll definitely be a sticker on the helmet. I noticed that I thought Deion Sanders had a great idea where he gave suits to all the players. I would love to, you know, have a suit with a, you know, Michigan 1,000 on there. I'm sure there'll be lots of T-shirts and memorabilia. Cool stuff. What else we got, Dave? I know your wife's working on it. You know, just yeah, celebration. You know, and hopefully it comes this season. We're working really hard to make that happen. So that is definitely one thing that is causing some nostalgia. You know, for sure. That's huge. That's really big, and so yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Jim Harbaugh continues to talk glowingly about his quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, and for good reason. McCarthy, the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week for his effort in Michigan's win over Indiana. Harbaugh would go on to say he is a generational quarterback and could leave as the best to ever play in Ann Arbor. Up next for Michigan, a date with Michigan State. Spartans continue to struggle now, 4 straight losses, including giving up 21 points to Rutgers this past Saturday to lose 27-24. It's been an uphill battle for interim head coach Harlon Barnett, though this rivalry does seem to bring out the best in the green and white. Let's take it to East Lansing and join the Michigan State interim head coach.
Hello, everybody. Good to see everybody made it back from New Jersey. Looking forward to this week's game. As we all know, it's a big game, and our guys are locked in and already looking forward to it, and should be a great week.
Harlan, obviously the last 4 weeks haven't gone how you guys wanted. Is there any? Michigan's a very good team. Is there anything to the rivalry that can help refocus you guys and just try and get out of this funk with the challenge ahead?
Well, you always are just trying to get better no matter what, a rivalry game or not. Definitely, it can bring some more focus to it though, and we talked about having great attention to detail, and so. But far as if it's Michigan or not Michigan or what have you, we just need to start playing better, and now it's about finishing. So that's our next step. We got to finish, and we're looking forward to doing that this weekend.
With Mark obviously had a lot of success in this rivalry, and you were here for all of those wins. I know he's more of an advisory role or consultant, but is there anything that he adds to this week, the way he prioritizes this rivalry, that can maybe help you more than just something unique?
Right. Because he has a secret formula to success, I can't share, so I'll just say it that way if that's okay.
Harlan, you're an upbeat guy by nature. How hard has it been to stay that way? Because you have to be that way for your team, don't you?
Absolutely, Fred. I'm not gonna lie. Saturday was a gut punch. That was a gut punch, like. Oof. But as a man, as a leader, you have to step up in those situations and try to just get understanding of what it's all about, the big picture, and then relay it to the young man. I told them, hey man, in life, adversity is going to hit, and that's when you find out who a person really is in the midst of adversity. And so I'm no different. So I have to step up and be the person I say that I am, and present that to them so they can have an example to possibly look to.
Is it harder to bounce back from a game like that, or in a strange way, can it help you bounce back because they're so hacked off with the way they gave it away?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think it can work either way. we said the 24-hour rule, and sure enough, 24 hours, you gotta get rid of it and let it go. And so I think it's just mentally how you look at it and how you receive it and attack it. So for me personally, it's attack mode. You know, we lost 4 in a row, so now it's just attack mode. Just keep attacking. Eventually, you know, it's going to turn, and so that's how I think.
I'm wondering about the special teams mistakes the last couple weeks, couple games. What kind of things are you working to fix with that, and what did you see when you look back on the tape between the end of the Iowa game and then the 2 mistakes there in the fourth quarter?
It's all about, like I said before to the guys, great attention to detail. Things that have been covered, you can't, you know. So I told our guys this, you know, shout out to my father, rest his soul, but he used to have a bunch of sayings, right? A bunch of sayings. And one he used to say all the time, I remember from, I was a little guy, but he used to say, when the crowd starts hollering and the lights get hot, that's when I want to know if you can do it or not. And so crunch time, when the game is on the line, can you perform and do what you're supposed to do? Attention to detail, discipline, do your job. You don't have to do anything extra. Doing your job is making a play. And so when our guys get to that point, the offense, defense, and special teams, that's when we're going to be playing to the best of our potential. Late in games, trying to finish them out, and you just being disciplined. Because again, doing your job is making a play.
Harlon, Michigan, obviously, a good team so far this year. They haven't played a schedule that maybe lets people know exactly who they are, but I'm wondering what you see when you watch them and what sort of challenges they present compared to anybody else you face this year.
They're very disciplined in what they do, offense, defense, and special teams. They play hard, and they have a good passing game as well as running game. They got a good balance. And they just do a good job. They do a good job of coaching those guys up and putting them in position to make plays. They're a good football team.
Harlon, from your time as a player to now, what has changed the most in this rivalry for you?
What has changed the most? I don't know if much has changed. So as a player, didn't win as many as I would like to have won. But as a coach, have one more. So that's changed, the winning aspect from my personal perspective, if I can say that.
Harlon, obviously, everybody remembers what happened after the game last year. I was wondering what you thought about where the team's at, and is that something you addressed going into this week with what happened and maybe keeping stuff on the field?
That's it. We're focused on this year and just playing the game 11 on 11 on the football field, because that's all that matters. And that's where our focus is. 11 on 11 on the football field. You get plenty of chance to get out there and get after them and play hard, and all the other stuff. We're moving forward past that.
Do you sense that this week has been different for your guys at all?
Well, we just got back together today, this morning. So we had the practice, but already to say it, yes. It's only been, today, but yeah, they know what it is. They know what it's about, and the importance of this game to us here at Michigan State.
I guess kind of in what ways has it been different? You mentioned, the 24-hour rule and turning the page quickly. Something like this, do you think it has helped them to move forward?
Yes, I think so. Knowing that, hey, we got this team coming up, and I told them, let's be honest about it. They don't care that we lost the last 4 games. They're going to come after us no matter what, right? And we would do the same thing, right? So we got to get ourselves together and move forward. So that's why the 24-hour rule was so important.
Harlon, I don't want to goad you into saying anything and get you in trouble, but Coach D made this rivalry personal. He called it personal. He revived the rivalry with his actions, and it's always been personal to you. Do you have to sell that all on your players, or do you bank on it being personal to them too, if you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. So you go back to Coach Perlis, that's what I always go back to, because that was my head coach here, and how he talked about it and gave the history of it and all of that. So in today's world of transfer portal and all of that, and you're trying to get them to understand as well. You try to get them to understand, because you don't really know until you play in it. And so you might, even some guys, you're trying to, hey man, this is serious, this is big time. You know, it's the best rivalry in football, in my opinion. And so you trying to tell them, but sometimes they just don't know until they play. I've heard many guys say, even if it was freshmen, in their first game against these guys, say, oh, I see what you mean now. So sometimes it don't matter. You can say all you want throughout the week. It's not until afterwards sometimes, or once they get in it, do they really understand what you've been trying to tell them.
That leads to me to ask you when it became personal for you. Was it when you played in it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Coach Perlis, you know, I blame Coach Perlis. I always say that, rest his soul. But I blame. But yeah, he got me fired up. That's all. And then I've been that way ever since 1985, man. So it is what it is. And so, I always say this too. I think it's great for the state of Michigan. I really do. I really do. Because in this state, you grew up one way or the other. You know, so whenever I go out recruiting in the state, I say who you grew up rooting for. Because they're going to tell you one or the other. You're going to get one or the other. And you kind of know where they stand. Most guys stand, but you always can act it in this state. And like I said, it's great for the state. It really is.
You're an Ohio guy. You didn't have any aversion to them until you came here, right?
That is correct. That is correct. Because I was different. Some people may think, well, weren't you Ohio State? And then you didn't like them. I watched more pro ball. I ain't gonna even lie to you. Growing up, I did watch college ball, but I wasn't into it like that. I was more of a pro football guy, just watching them, and just enjoyed watching college football. So it wasn't until I got here, like I said, and listening to Coach Perlis tell us about the rivalry and how it came about, the history. That's when I really got into it.
With Caton, this will obviously be his first start against Michigan, his first time starting at Spartan Stadium under the lights. What makes him ready for this moment against Michigan?
Well, he's a college football player. He understands what he was signing up for when he signed a scholarship, and this is one of the reasons why he chose to come to Michigan State, is to play in games like this. He came from a big-time high school program out there in California at Bosco, and so not that Bosco is playing this type of game, but he's used to big-time atmospheres and high expectations. So expecting him to do and have a great game.
Harlon, when you look at their run game, it seems like they do some things that you just don't see a ton anymore, and with how physical they are and their style. What are the keys that you see that makes that thing work for them with their run game?
Their discipline and how they attack everything they do. So they know, you can tell the offensive line is in sync, along with the tight ends and the running back. Everybody's in sync and understanding their assignments. And so that's what they do good.
Sort of flipping around defensively, they've only allowed 10 points once, and every other game I think was single digits. So what are you noticing that they're doing well on that side?
Same type of thing. They're disciplined in what they do. They understand where they fit and where they need to be in their assignments. So that's what good teams do.
You said you don't know until you're in it. Whether it's coaching in this rivalry or playing in this rivalry, do you have one specific memory that kind of defines it? Again, other than that, like, oh, this is what it is. But do you have a game, win or loss, or anything that you're like, okay, this is what it's about?
Minus 48 yards rushing.
Simple. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm wondering, looking back at the Rutgers game, kind of two things on either side of the ball. One, Khalil Majid coming in for Malik, and I saw Malik came back late. But what's the situation there? Was that a place performance issue, or was it injury?
Malik got a little dinged up, but like you said, you saw him come back in, so he's good. He's ready to go. But it was more that he got a little dinged and make sure he was okay.
Okay. And secondly, 2 receiver fumbles, the one play to Malik Carr that he had it stripped from him. With that, I mean, you mentioned the attention to details. How do you work with that with the receivers? And was with that play with Carr, was there a thought to challenge that?
No, you clearly saw the guy made a good play. I was standing literally right there. I mean, it was kept boom, and he swatted out. What we say, hook and swat as defensive backs, and that boom, boom, and he got it out. I saw it. I saw it right there, then and there. But we got to continue. We've been talking about the turnovers and penalties and things like that, and the penalties were down this week, and we got to continue to work on getting the turnovers. We have to just secure the ball, the best we can. I even talked about, getting 2 hands on it some kind of way. As soon as you catch it and tuck it away quick and put 2 hands up there, no matter whatever you have to do to secure the ball. So we're working on it. Our offensive staff is a heck of a staff, and they're going to keep working on it and getting our guys to where they can hold on to the ball once they have it.
Harlon, I was wondering about the backfield rotation. We saw more of Jalen on Saturday. He looked like he's getting healthier. Is he almost 100%? And I guess, is Harold Joyner now just like the permanent 3rd running back or 3rd on the depth chart and more pass pro than after bouncing around all those positions?
Yes, yes to that question on everything that you said. Jalen Berger, I thought looked really good out there on Saturday. He's from Jersey, so he probably had a little extra juice, but he looked good. I thought he looked good. Of course, Nathan Carter is a heck of a back, and being able to use Harold Joyner out there, he does a good job. He understands, had a nice little run. So that's a good complement of backs I think that we have right now, and they do a good job.
Hey, Harlan, just going back to the Rutgers game, the players after the game, you've watched the film now, but the players after the game, I think all of them made a point that Rutgers played hard till the end. They didn't come out and say that maybe you guys didn't play as hard or you guys didn't play hard, but I'm curious what you saw, if you saw any give on your guys' part when things started going south there at the end.
I'm not going to necessarily say give. It was the discipline thing I mentioned earlier. Just doing what you're doing your job. Sometimes when things start going awry, guys will feel like, not only do I have to do my job, I got to do something else to go make a play. Again, doing your job is making a play. Being disciplined is making a play. And that's what we have to do. In some areas on the field, we have a lot of young guys, haven't been in real tight situations like that. So we're learning and growing at the same time. And hopefully we're getting these lessons as we go through them.
The pregame availability report had some new guys on it ahead of that game. We didn't get a chance to ask him. Just wondering, is anybody else that's a voluntary opt-out or anything, or are those all injury situations if they're on that list?
Injury situations, yep. No opt-out situations as of today, this morning, or anything that I've heard. Yeah.
You kind of touched on Michigan's offense, but they had changes, all phases of the game from last time you played them. But same quarterback, same top 2 running backs. I guess how much different do you think they are now than when you played them there last year?
Well, they're just more experienced. They got those same guys, but they're more experienced. Okay? They got another year under their belt, and they're playing like that. They understand the offense and like I said, their assignments and where they need to be, and so they're playing like a more experienced group, if that makes sense.
Well, there's no question this rivalry brings out the best in both Michigan and Michigan State. Harlon Barnett saying it can bring more focus to getting better, but Barnett continued as far as if it's Michigan or not Michigan, we need to start playing better, and now it's about finishing, certainly is after giving up 21 points to Rutgers in the 4th quarter. We are back on this Monday Coaches Press Conference edition of Big Ten Live. Minnesota needed a week off, and they got it, following that 52-10 loss to Michigan. The good news is Gophers are rested, perhaps a little bit healthier. The bad news is they have to take a road trip this weekend to an awfully tough place to play, the Iowa Hawkeyes, at Kinnick Stadium, coming off a win over Wisconsin. That's what's up next for PJ Fleck and the Gophers as we take you to the Twin Cities. Here is the Minnesota head coach.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Coming off the bye week. I'm sure you got some questions, so we'll just go right into questions.
When you look back on the passing game, what do you feel like needs to improve to get that off the ground?
Well, I don't necessarily know if to get it off the ground. I think we've had some games we've been really efficient in the past game. And we played some really good football teams that, played 2 top 10 teams in the country. And then, we have another top 25 team coming up this weekend. So I think this team is, for the first few games, is finding their identity. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns on our offense. And I think as you go forward, you're finding out what you're really good at, what you're not really good at. But you're looking for balance any way you can possibly get it. Playmakers touching the ball, people earning the right to have the ball, finding out what people can do. Again, that's where the youth and inexperience comes into play, is finding out what our identity is going to be. And you have 6 games of data to research that, to look into that, take the bye week to look at it. We've been close. I mean, I know that doesn't mean anything to all of you. We've been close. When you go back and watch all of it, we're a foot off here or a yard off here. I mean, it's close from being better than what we've been able to do. So we just want more balance, and need to be better at it for sure.
What stands out about this Iowa team?
And they're Iowa. I think with this team, when we're talking about complementary football, I think a lot of people just think, okay, you're really good on offense, really good on defense, really good on special teams. It's not about being good on one or the other. It's about how do you go through a game and go win games based on your formula to win games. And I don't think there's a team that does it better than Iowa. That they understand who they are more than most teams. They stick to who they are more than most teams. And then they beat you in every area. And that was a prime example last weekend against Wisconsin of exactly who Iowa is. And they're very efficient. They don't turn the ball over. Their special teams are a huge factor in how they win. I mean, a huge factor. Their special team doesn't get enough credit. And their defense is one of the best defenses in the country consistently. So they have a formula, and they do it really well.
Would you emphasize this past week with the bye, extra time with the bye?
Yeah, we went back to just we obviously looked at all the 6 games and found out, what did we learn from each one of those games. Not only that, what do we specifically have to do fundamentally and technique to get better? What do we need to do schematically to be better? How can we find better ways to move the football? How can we find ways to be able to stop people on defense? And how can we make special teams even better? So that was the whole thing, Minnesota versus Minnesota for the first few days. Then we transitioned to Iowa around Thursday, and then players got a little time off, and coaches went out recruiting, and then, game planned Iowa over the weekend. So, we're working on that as we speak.
What do you think Ethan has learned from these first 6 games just about leading and running the offense as best as he can?
Well, I think that he's maturing with every game that he plays in, and I think it's just like, depositing, money into a bank. He's putting more deposits in there by the game, mentally, physically, and emotionally. I think we all see he's got every physical skill, but it's going through different environments, going through different situations, having the ebbs and flow of a game, the response mechanisms, the leadership, influencing everybody on the football team based on your body language and everything that goes into play with that. Learning, he's learning as well. It's not like he knows all of it. So I think it's, he's every game he's getting a little bit better in his responses to what he does. I think, when you look at, we look at how we lost the game at Northwestern, and we come back and respond against Louisiana, and he plays a really good game. I think that shows that response mechanism. You go play a top 10 team. The 2 interceptions for pick sixes, they're not, when you look at it, it's not a bonehead decision. He throws it to the right guy both times, but we're a little bit off. Just a little bit. One, the Michigan guy makes a great play on basically on 4 read, baiting us into the throw, and then the throw is just a foot off. The other one, another foot or 2 off. But it's not like he's making horrible decisions. Maybe at the beginning of the year there were some that we got to be better at coaching him with, but he's getting there. I thought yesterday was one of his best practices that he's had, and he's constantly showing growth. Now, you got to continue to show growth at a rapid rate because there's so much to learn, but he's willing to do that, and that's what's so fun to coach him. He's willing to do it. And he's willing to know what he has to get better at. So we got to do a really good job coaching him. We got to do a really good job explaining all the whys and not assume somebody knows something. And I think our coaches do a pretty good job of that. So he's willing to do it. Coaches are willing to do it. And we see progress on a daily basis and mentally, physically, and emotionally from his game.
PJ, with how close this rivalry has been the last few years, what would it mean for you to get your first win over Iowa?
Well, obviously it means a lot. It means a lot to our fan base. It means a lot to our players. It means a lot to our state, as it does Iowa's team. You know, they've had a lot of success in years past. I think we haven't won there since 1999. We've won 2 games and 2 times in 40. Is that right? 2 times in 40 games or 40 years. That's not a lot. So, we've got our work cut out for us. We know how good they are. Game's been really close the last few years. That's what rivalry should be. I think both teams really respect the rivalry. The fan bases really do. Iowa's obviously had the upper hand over the years, but we're preparing to do everything we can to be 1-0. It's a 1-game championship season. It's a huge rivalry game. We've talked to our players what it means. They understand that. A lot of guys who've been here understand that. They know how close we've been, and we kind of do the history of the rivalry just like we do every other rivalry game. But we're going in to play a top 25 team. We know that. They know all the facts that everybody reports. But we just got to go in and play our best game, offense, defense, special teams. I mean, this team still has not played their best football yet, and that's my responsibility and my job to get them to. And hopefully they can do that on Saturday afternoon.
Bring anybody in or have anybody of the experienced players on the team talk about this rivalry and what it means to them?
Well, we explain what the rivalry is, and I think we have a lot of players on our team that understand that. I mean, you come to Minnesota to play in, I think, the most rivalry games in the Big Ten, right? I mean, that's what's so fun about playing here. I'm sure there's going to be more added as we get to the 18 teams, but we do what we call a captain's breakfast right before. It's really at our breakfast in the morning of the game. We always bring in a former player. And usually around the area to where they either live or where they can drive to, all over the country. We have alumni, east to west, north and south. So, but we always bring somebody in to talk about the importance of that game, a memory that they have about that game, whether it's a rivalry or not. But usually when we play in a rivalry game, we bring somebody in that, that has that connection to that rivalry, did something special in that rivalry game, and can really bring that to them. Ricky Foggy spoke last week. It did a great job. I mean, he was short, sweet, to the point. But those are the type of alumni we bring in to just. I learned that from Jim Tressel when we were at Ohio State. He did that the morning of a game, and I thought that was a great idea to connect the alumni to your current players. And our alumni do a fantastic job with that captain's breakfast. And people drive hours and hours and hours to be at that. Some fly in for it just to spend 10 minutes with our football team. And deliver a message. So that's something that we started here, and I think it's a great tradition that we have, and we'll continue to do that.
So Michigan or Iowa's a very physical team.
Yep.
Does that change the pace of your rotation of players at all, keeping people fresh?
I think that we will have a game plan for that. You want the drives to be shorter, that's for sure. If Iowa's going to run the football, they've had times they've ran the football 15 straight plays in a row. If you go back and look at all their cut-ups, right around that number. So, they have no problem doing that and moving the chains. They get your eyes in the wrong spot, play action pass. Screens have hurt us in the past. Eyes been in the wrong spot. They've had some good things dialed up for us. They've been really good on the first drive. For us, we just got to find a way to be able to get off the field on defense. And we're going to do our normal rotation as of right now. But they have different personnel groupings than what we faced. So we'll have things for that as well. But, if you have a 12, 14 play drive, you're rotating guys as it is. So it's not necessarily just you're changing that based on what they do schematically. You just want to make sure you can get them off the field as fast as you possibly can, and then sustain drives on defense or on offense and for their defense, because that's where they get you. Then they flip field position so well. That's the thing. They could be punting from their 25-yard line, and they could have went 3 and out, and it's 3rd and 10, and they've burned 2 minutes off the clock, but their punter punts at 65 yards and completely flips the field. Now you're inside your own 20 when you think you're going to get pretty good field position. So that's a credit to them and what they do and how they and the players they have and the philosophy that they have. Every drive that you look at seems to be an 80, 90-yard drive, or it has to be. Penn State ran 90-plus plays. Penn State, 90-plus plays and scored 31 points.
a lot of different fronts, a lot of different blitzes, so
Yeah.
they really come after you defensively.
They do. I mean, they're I can't say typical, because I don't want to say typical Iowa defense, because I think that gets redundant over the course of time, but it's a compliment when I say it. It's typical Iowa defense. They keep everything in front of them. They limit explosive plays. They're great tacklers. They swarm to the ball. They have a knack to get the ball out. They have a knack to be able to pick balls off. They're constantly creating takeaways. They had some takeaways at the early beginning of the year, but it's not like that has followed them as they've continued to go through the year. They've taken care of the football. They've made their opponents make mistakes, and then they just squeeze you out. And that's what they've done. And their guys play extremely hard. I mean, they rotate a ton of guys, and they play a lot of guys, but they're very good, very physical, very good at the details of the game within their system.
What challenges does Cooper DeJean present in both secondary and on returns?
And he's one of the best return men because he's fearless. He'll catch any ball. He rarely fair catches, if ever. He's going to make you tackle him in space. His thing is make the first guy miss, and then from there, I mean, it's game on. Thought Wisconsin did a good job of the way they had their punt formations and what they were doing to be able to swarm and get him on the ground. But there are plenty of times it probably called for a fair catch. It didn't fair catch it. He's a true football player. He's tough. He's smooth. He's smart. And that carries over to when he plays corner. He doesn't let many people get behind him. He takes the game very seriously. You can tell he's a student of the game. He's not only studying, obviously, the scheme stuff, but he studies his opponents. You can tell by the way he plays everybody just a little bit different. He's got great ball skills. He's smart. He's tough, physical, and he can flat out fly. So I think one of the best players in the conference, overall football players, because he can play any position. I mean, you can put him in any position, he'll play it. Offense, defense, special teams, that's what makes him really special. He's a true football player. I think the best compliment you can get from somebody is telling them you're a football player. And people know what I mean when I say that. He loves the game, you can tell, by how he plays, and it jumps out on the film.
Personally, in the program as a whole, what's the best part of a bye week?
Well, I think it's not to hit a reset button, because I don't think you ever reset because you're in an actual season. You reset when the season's over and you got a new football team. So I think for us, it's be able to reflect on where you were in 6 games, squeeze all the juice from the orange, draw a line in the sand, and say, okay, we got to be better at these things. I've already said we played an entire season within 6 games. We played 2 top 10 opponents. Again, we've been ahead. We've blown a team out. We had a team come back on us. And we've experienced an awful lot. We've played some of the best players and best teams in the country. So, I mean, those are things that we can learn on and learn from. I think when you play some of those teams early, it exposes what you're not very good at very quickly. And it's very transparent and honest, because you're not just saying it as a coach. You're looking on the screen and you're saying, here's the data, look. And our guys have been very receptive to that. They understand. Our coaches have been receptive to that. We're all working together to be better. So the bye week's really important too. Plus, I think the players can take a little bit of an exhale, do everything you can to get guys healthy. It rejuvenates you, I think. Some guys went home. Sometimes that helps, especially a lot of our younger players who are playing. It's good to be able to get home and see your family. They've been going pretty hard for 11, 12 straight weeks. So, it was well needed for us at that time. I've never seen a bye week come at a bad time.
The whole season in these first 6 games, and then preparing for a game like the game against Nebraska, where every point, every drive matters, and it's kind of like a defensive battle. How have you prepared your guys for that?
Well, I don't think it's hard to prepare them for a game against Iowa, because they know what those games entail. We have some guys that you have to inform what it's going to be like. But it's not only that, it's the environment. I think Iowa creates one of the best college football environments in the country. I thought that when I was a GA at Ohio State. I thought when I played at Northern Illinois, our trips to Iowa. I mean, their fan base does a great job of supporting their team, and they got some of the best traditions in college football, and the Wave is I think, the best. So there's a lot of different things that we prepare our team for when going there. But you know what you're in for. I mean, it is a true rivalry game that throw the records out the window, throw the rankings out the window. Both teams want to be 1-0 at the end, and they've got us the last few years for sure, and taking advantage of that.
PJ, is the plan for Cody and Darius to practice tomorrow?
Well, that's always the plan. That's always the plan. I'm not the trainer, so the plan for me is always to practice them, if we can. But the injury report will come out 2 hours before kickoff. But that's the plan.
Makes Iowa's run game so tough to stop. I see they ran for 236 last week. So what's the challenge for you defensively there?
You know, I think from like an average fan standpoint, this is no disrespect. It's like, well, all they do, like they just run the ball. Like I told you weeks ago, they're like, you know, my dad's like, you just run the ball in the middle, and then you just run the ball on the outside. You're running the same play over and over. Well, technically, no. Iowa does such a great job of doing what they do, whether it's gap schemes, whether it's zone schemes, and they just keep it going. They make you fit it perfectly every time because the backs are really patient. I think what makes really special running backs is the ability to be patient. There's times not to be, and then there's times to be. And I think they have a great sense of what each individual play represents, whether it's zone schemes, whether it's gap schemes, what does it call for, and everybody finishing their blocks. And then sooner or later, it comes spitting out. You look at that game, and I mean, they have a huge 70-yard run for a touchdown. Their backs can finish it when they're in the open. You fit the gap and your eyes get in the wrong spot one time. They gap you out. They play a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 13 personnel. They'll add a lot of people where every gap matters. And then they do some movements and shifts and some reverses and motions. You start doing that, and one guy gets his eyes out of the gap, it's a touchdown because you're not going to sit there and play him in cover two. You got to get people down in the box to be in those gaps, or you're going to be given 8-9 yards of carry. And that's when some guy doesn't have their eyes in the right spot and you take the cheese somewhere, it comes out for 70. And they just do it over and over and over and over and over. And eventually their defense is so good that even if they score one touchdown, that's going to be good enough to beat you. Right? So they can do it over and over and over with that consistency because eventually you will make a mistake. And they control the ball. Now, if you're not controlling the ball, you can't do that. If your defense isn't good, you can't do that. Right? They can do that because that's the complementary piece of that. And I've got so much respect for what they do and how they do it. And they don't get enough credit for it because it is special because of how consistent they've been with that style for so long.
Take one or two more for Coach, if all right.
With that, how critical are cleaning up little details in this bye week?
They've been critical. We started them usually maybe a little bit earlier than we normally did just because of how much inexperience we have over on that side of the ball. So we've got to make sure of those things. And, we're throwing a lot of things at them, even from past years. And I know they're going to have new wrinkles, to what they do to make it hard for us. But, we need to make sure our guys are in the right spot and they're disciplined to make sure their eyes are in the right spot.
What have you seen from Deacon Hill in his first few games?
Well, he can really throw it. I think that's one thing that, you sit there and say, okay, well, you get to the next guy, who's it going to be? And, I mean, he can throw the ball a long ways. He's got a big arm. He's strong. He's big. You're not going to bring him down with just one person either. If you're going to sack him, you've got to be able to bring a lot of people, and they've got to get a hold of him. They're getting the ball out of his hand really early, so nobody can necessarily get to him as much. And they're efficient in the pass game when they do throw it. They are completing it, catching it on the run, and being efficient with yardage. And they're getting the ball. I know they've had some tight end injuries, but they'll always have a plan to get the ball to some people, some way, somehow. You go back and look at how they've hurt us in the past. It's been through either screens, it's been through a shot, it's been through things like that when it's gotten boring. You got to break boring with these guys. You got to break boring. And that's been our whole message of the week for them, break boring. Because boring, to do the same thing, get your eyes in the spot. Human nature tells us, that's when somebody runs by you when your eyes get to the wrong spot, doing the same thing over and over and over, and that's how they get you. Very good football team. Should be a great matchup. Be a lot of fun in Iowa City. All right, roll the boat, Sky, Michael, Gophers. Thanks for your time, everybody.
So PJ Fleck and Minnesota deal with Iowa this week. Wisconsin had to deal with the Hawkeyes last week. It did not work out very well. A 15-6 loss for the Badgers. Their first in Big Ten play, perhaps more importantly, also lost quarterback Tanner Mordecai in that game to an injured hand. Hope to hear more, maybe get an update right now from Luke Fickell as we take you to Madison.
This has been a tough one, but we knew we had to move past. We said that yesterday. As you guys probably have heard, that Tanner broke his hand in the game, had surgery on Sunday morning, and we don't know the exact, timetable on him as well. So that'll probably just be left pretty much open for a little while. Like I said, we don't know a ton more about that. But it's this is one of those things, man. You get in this league and you're going to have to move forward. And tough game on Saturday and come in on Sunday, spend a lot of time, looking at it, evaluating a bunch of things, get our guys in here, give them an opportunity to put it to rest, to find, to learn, and to move forward. And I think that's where if I could say anything, the resiliency right now, the attitudes of our guys, I couldn't be more impressed with. I know it's hard to say, but I did tell them that I thought last week was a really, really, really good week of preparation. They did a great job respecting the rivalry and all the things that they did, practicing with intensity. Didn't end up working, but that's a part of the game as well. And so there's only one way to get the taste out of your mouth. That was to go back out there yesterday, and today makes it a little bit harder because you don't get to go out and practice and kind of finish up the taste in your mouth, but we'll get rolling with that again tomorrow.
Luke, I think you were asked after the game about the potential of tweaking some things offensively to fit more of what Braden can do versus Tanner. What do you, when you look at those two, what do you see the differences are, and what do you think some of the things you can maybe accentuate with Braden?
I don't know that there's a ton of differences. I mean, I think the biggest difference is just the experience. And that was the beautiful thing about Tanner Mordecai is, his ability to come in here, not just with his experience of playing, but his experience of being through so many ups and downs, from his original stop in, at Oklahoma to SMU. And those things are invaluable. And Braden just doesn't have those experiences, and so that makes it more difficult in some ways for him. But I'll be honest with you, he's got a great head on his shoulders. I mean, there's nobody that's in this building more than him. Maybe Tanner be the only other one that pushes the envelope to, you got to kick him out of here. But we feel really good about his ability to execute, do a lot of the things that we have done. But everybody has their strengths, and we'll have to play a little bit more in some of those ways towards what we feel like he can do best.
Luke, obviously you're talking about Braden there, but do you envision maybe packages for guys like Miles or Nick down the road, or how do you kind of see that position?
We'll see. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, I know Miles is listed as the backup, and I know we talked about this yesterday, and it'll be, we'll see who this week really kind of picks up the slack a little bit and gets their opportunities to go in there with the second group, whether that's against the defense or that's in some of the scout work stuff, and to see who kind of takes the bit there. But as you get into those guys, there are some differences, obviously, with what it is that they can do and what they're most comfortable doing, none of which have much experience of playing, but all have different talents. So you feel like when you're consistent about at least what you've put in from the time spring ball forward, all guys have to have a grasp of the things that we're doing. But each of them, obviously being young, have a uniqueness to a lot of the things that they can do, I think, especially now.
Luke, you mentioned you feel pretty good about Braden and the strengths that he brings. We haven't had a chance to see him in a few months. What has stood out to you in his time in the program and the things you think he can do well?
Well, I probably said it from the get-go, right? I mean, there's nobody that's here more, that spends more time in here in the office and breaking and watching film and learning and studying. To be honest with you, from the time he walked in the door, through the weight room and stuff like that, he's changed in a lot of ways. That's not probably when he walked in the door his strong suit. Sometimes you get in places where quarterbacks are handled a lot different, just in their lifting and in their, their development outside of just in the classroom and on the football field. And I thought he's done a great job with that as well. Like I said, the unique thing is guys rallying around him, guys understanding who he is, guys having confidence and belief in him. And we got a small glimpse of what he has been able to do just this past week in a very tough situation. But I think this will be a different thing for him walking in the door, knowing what he's got to be able to do.
Luke, you talked about open competition for the backup spot. Do you envision one or the other being similar to Braden Locke's skill set wise as a factor in the backup competition?
No, I don't know that is. I mean, because I think all those guys are uniquely a bit different, meaning that they're really young. Not that Braden's really old, but I think just in where they are in the grasp of the overall scheme of things. And I mean that because you can study it, you can work it, you can learn it, but when you don't get the opportunity to even go out there and practice every week, whether you're running with the twos or even in fall camp when you're competing more so with the ones and the twos, it's hard to say that you're developing as much as you need to at that position. And that's what's, to me, always the most difficult thing about that third quarterback is how much opportunities does he get? How many reps does he get? Even, in there, during a game week, if, they're not down with the scout running and doing some things, they're really just getting mental reps down there with the offense. So that's why it's kind of a competition to see now one put in there who can do the little things really well. Not just what their skill set is, but who can take care of the football, who understands what it is that what needs to be done.
That's kind of a follow-up on that. Normally, if you have a clear 1 and 2 quarterbacks, the reps in practice are pretty static. But with so many inexperienced guys, what factors do you weigh in how you divvy up those reps?
Well, it'll be who can take care of the football, and we do enough with ones on ones and twos on twos, just to make sure we're continuing to play the speed of the game. That you'll see some of those things, and even during a normal week, we go threes a little bit and just some situational stuff, and those guys are always kind of rolling through there, and you get to see who understands some things, but also who can take care of the football, who can not put yourself in a really difficult and a worse situation than you already are in. And I think that's where, when making a decision, it's going to come down to who's going to give us the best opportunity to manage what it is that we need to do.
You kind of challenged the offensive line after the game, kind of said that they need to step up with the quarterback situation. Obviously, a tough defensive line here in Illinois this week. What do you think the offensive line needs to do in terms of elevating their play from what you've seen the first 6 weeks?
When I say that because there are guys that can handle it. I think that when you start talking about protection and the ability to dominating and controlling the line of scrimmage, that gives you a lot more confidence in everything that you're doing. And where I thought the offensive line played a good game, we need him to play even better. And I think as you get these situations, just like we're going to say about Braylon's going to have to put some more on his shoulders as well. Anytime you got some new guys in there, there's other things you got to throw upon other people. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't think they could handle it, right? If we had a younger offensive line, I wouldn't be saying we're going to put a little bit more on our offensive linemen to do the things they need to do. And if we didn't have an established tailback that, can handle it, then I probably wouldn't be saying that about him as well. And so I think those are the things where you're just saying, okay, now who do we turn towards? Who's going to be the kind of the spark? Let's be honest. Tanner Mordecai was a leader and will still continue to be a leader. And not that Braylon can't, because anytime whoever's at quarterback has to be a leader. But I think this is an opportunity that we have to have some other guys that kind of got to step out of maybe their comfort zones and take a little bit more of a leadership role.
Luke, you said after the Buffalo game that if you're the same in week 1 as you are in week 8, it's going to be very difficult to have a successful season. You're not at week 8 yet, but I'm just wondering where you think you guys are better now than you were back in week 1.
Well, I mean, I think we understand each other better. I think we understand, what our guys are being able to do a little bit better, both offensively and defensively. Sometimes you kind of assume things that are going to happen when all of a sudden the bullets start flying, and then maybe they do or they don't, or somebody exceeds your expectations. So, with injuries and all those things coming about, if you don't have a structure to what it is that you want to do, it's really difficult. That's kind of that consistency behind it. So as a new guy comes in like Braden, you want to be able to still have the structure to what you do, but you got to tailor things and make sure you're putting guys, especially young guys, in situations where they can handle it. And so does that cause you to evolve a little bit different? It can, but all in all, we got to continue to grow. And I think that's where you have a loss, and the initial thing to look at is, oh man, you took a step backwards. Well, there's some things we didn't take a step backwards in. But there's a lot of things that we know we got to continue to push forward with as well. And in a game like that last week, they just get highlighted a lot more.
You had mentioned after the Iowa game, when you were talking about the offense, you were still trying to kind of use how the players fit into the system. Do you feel like it's been perhaps more of a challenge than anticipated in this overhaul to get them playing at the level that you guys believe is possible?
No, I think there's just some new things, right? I mean, like by nature, what they see every day, and what we saw in fall camp and what they saw in spring ball was a little bit different. Meaning, like, let's say blocking on the perimeter. We didn't do a great job this past week of blocking on the perimeter. The way they played their zone match concept and some of the things. The nickel took a lot of things away from us, and they did a great job with the vision and not being able to, maybe handle that thing on the perimeter. Not something that, our guys probably saw a ton against our defense, playing a little bit more man, playing a little bit more on-body stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to block out there on the perimeter just by the nature of a guy's playing man-to-man on another guy. So that's where you're just, guys are thrown into these other situations. Do they recognize, whether it's a Tucker Ashcraft who's a freshman or Hayden Rucci who, probably hasn't played other than start a spring ball, out there in space a lot. Do they recognize some of those things and be able to execute on game day when things are a little bit different? That's where we're having to continue to, try to tailor what it is that we need to do based on what, our guys have the best opportunity to do too. And that's what we kind of mean by the evolution and as you evolve through the season.
I'm curious, everybody wants to look ahead to what Braden has to offer, and rightfully so, but what have your conversations with Tanner been like since Saturday? Can you kind of convey what his emotion was like after the game?
Very tough. I mean, there's nobody that's more of a competitor than him, and just like for the sheer reason he didn't come out after the play happened, right? He breaks his hand. He stays in there. It feels like he's just got a little, just kind of working it out with his hand, and goes on the next play, and we call a play, and unfortunately it's 2nd and 2, and as he goes to kind of rip the ball, he recognizes he cannot grip the football, and so he obviously tries to get us out of a bad situation, and takes a 1-yard loss or something like that to put us in 3rd and 3. But most others would have probably felt the pain and curious about what it was, and there's a guy that his competitive spirit and his emotions probably kept him from feeling what was natural. Hindsight, he wish he would have recognized it a little bit better and maybe didn't take the 2nd down play. I don't know what he would have done. Maybe just dropped down, and they wouldn't have said they were trying to delay the game, because they don't usually blame offenses for that. But I think that's just kind of shows his mentality to how he plays the game.
Luke, you talked about leaders stepping up, and last 3 games seems like Muma's role maybe is more of a true number 2 than number 1 inside linebacker. In your experience, do you think it's tougher for guys to be a leader when they're not on the field as much?
It is. There's no doubt. I mean, us as coaches tell them, well, you don't change, be the same person you are, still take the same role. And the nature of it is it's really difficult, right? It's like when a guy gets injured, what we're going to ask Tanner to do, and the leadership we're going to ask of him, and whether it's Tanner or Ches, you guys got to keep your role. Guys still look to you. Boy, is that difficult. And but we're going to have that expectation for them to do that and make sure they understand that their teammates are counting on them for that role that they need to provide. And but there's no doubt it is definitely harder.
Luke, with Tanner's hand, is it more of a finger situation, a palm? I mean, structurally, what?
I'm not a doc. It was a hand. I don't know exactly whether it's the 5th metatarsal or something. I'm not positive. I know they put a pin in it, and there's not a real established timetable to how fast he can handle the things he would need to handle. But it is in his throwing hand.
Luke, talking about some of the short distance situations, it seems like there have been some inconsistencies to begin the season. You guys ran from under center on a 4th down play. What have been some of the issues early on, and do you envision running some more under center in those situations going forward?
Well, I mean, that kind of each week, I mean, we were under center obviously last week on the 4th and short, and sometimes that makes it a little bit more difficult for the quarterback to have any recognition or any idea of a free guy coming off the backside edge, and also doesn't provide that guy off the backside edge to have to at least honor the quarterback in some of those situations. So that's a part of it. But normally when we get to bigger people, we have the ability to get up under center. We did the same thing and ended up jumping off sides. So those are things where we cannot make those mistakes. Those are probably the things that are really costing us, going from 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 to 3rd and 7. That would probably be one of the bigger emphases that we made on Sunday with our guys, the honesty things of how we're putting ourselves in a really tough situation with some of those and some of the penalties on special teams.
Luke, you talked about the long touchdown run Iowa had. We
I
talked
did.
about it after the game.
Oh.
The players said we didn't fit it up properly. And I'm just curious, when you looked at tape, what did you see that broke down? But even if something broke down initially, were you guys in position to bring that guy down before he gets out all the way to the end zone?
Yes. I don't know if you saw it or if you've seen it as many times as I have, but there's two guys there. They actually kind of overlap each other and stack on each other and probably put the corner. I'm not sure if it was Rico or yeah, so it was Alex maybe or whoever. Kind of the two guys got in each other's way with him and Hunter, and we actually had a chance to have him in the backfield too. But then ultimately, I think that we ended up missing a tackle from the middle of field safety, and then obviously Rico ended up chasing or not able to catch up with him. But there's a few of them right there in that situation. You go from a possibility of a 0-yard gain to a 8-yard gain to an 82-yard gain, and that's the one that is probably, obviously, as you look back at the biggest and really the only, right? We had one 43-yard, 42-yard play on offense. They had one 82-yard play. When we break down things offensively and defensively, we're all looking for big plays, and we call anything a plus 20. We don't even get into the runs or passes anymore. Anything that's a plus 20 is a big play. Give up one on defense, and we had one on offense, and which is rare in a lot of games today.
Luke, you ended up passing, I think, 50 times against Iowa. I know 8 of those came, last drive when you're down 2 possessions. But in general, and this may depend on the matchup, I assume, do you have an ideal in terms of the balance you want, particularly knowing you've got a quarterback who doesn't have as much experience as Tanner does?
No, I mean, balance is you love to come out of the game with the yardage balanced up, right? I mean, if you're all one way, then it becomes really difficult to be good at it, right? I never want to be the team that leads the country in rushing, right? That's usually a military academy that's run the triple option. But then, you don't want to lead the country in passing either because then you're a team that probably doesn't ever run the football. So it's hard to say exactly where you are, but like we said, if you could have balance being 250 and 250 ultimately would be the greatest thing, whatever it takes to get to that point. But that's where we got to continue to figure out what's truly going to be our strengths. And if it means more of, 60-40 on running the football, then it means more 60-40 running the football. But I don't think that you can just for sure say what that exactly is. It's kind of like in the personnel department as well. You got to find a way to get your best 11 guys on the field. And if guys get hurt, then who's the next one that makes you the best 11 out there?
Luke, you talked about the offensive line and running back Braylon Allen obviously having a bigger emphasis with Braden in there. What's your message to the receiver room specifically with their ability to separate with Braden coming in?
Well, I don't spend a whole lot of time in the receiver room. They don't they don't kind of jive with me nearly as much with just the nature of the defensive lineman in me. But I've always told them, I said, your number one job is to make the quarterback look good. And what does that mean? That means whatever it means, right? I mean, if the ball's a little high, catch it. If the ball's a little low, catch it. If that means that, you got to beat the one-on-one to give the opportunity for the quarterback. He's got a lot on his plate. And so we got to continue to find ways to make the quarterback look good. And, we had some of those situations where we could have made him look a lot better, whether we catch the ball, stay on our feet, we run for some yards after catch, some of the third down. I mean, there's all different ways. And it's not saying that they didn't do a great job. It's just there's some difficult balls to be caught, especially as tight a coverage as those guys are playing and did play this past week. It's not going to be any different, So they've got to find ways to make their quarterback look good. And, there's many different ways of doing that.
I'm going to acknowledge that I'm asking this question after what was a pretty tough loss, but expectations coming into the year were pretty big from the outside. You had nothing to do with that. It's not your thing. But did we all underestimate maybe what the challenge you guys were walking into and your staff were walking into this year?
I don't know. I mean, again, there's nobody that puts more pressure and has a higher expectation than myself and the guys in the locker room, right? And I think that's where, you love them if everybody, you feel good going in the season because people think that. But the reality is that it happens every year. It's somebody, it's somewhere, it's something. Who knows whether it's realistic or not? Right now we're still in a position like, guys, quit worrying about the destination. That's what I try to tell them. Let's focus on the process to what we do. We get so caught up in the destination that you don't even have a chance to enjoy some of the things and the struggles that you have to go through, and which is not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm as bad as anybody, but the reality is that there's going to be a struggle, right? I mean, you can look at some of the best years here, and I don't even want to go back into but a Rose Bowl year where I think you ended the season at 6-6. And it's just Is it perception? Is it what? Who knows? You play your best ball at the end of the year, and you have an opportunity to not just have a successful season, but you see the growth and the things that you're doing, and whatever that ends up ultimately meaning at the end of the year, based on what your record, then you can feel good about continuing to move forward.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Bad news for Wisconsin and for Tanner Mordecai. It is officially a broken hand. Had surgery on Sunday. Luke Fickell confirming there is a pin inside Mordecai's surgically repaired hand. No official timetable on if or when he could return this season. Little rest, recovery, and reset this past weekend for Nebraska. Came off that 20-7 win at Illinois, then had a week off. Now the Huskers are turning home for back-to-back games. First Northwestern and then Purdue. A chance to get things headed in the right direction before Matt Rhule's first November with the Huskers. Let's head to Lincoln. Here is Nebraska head coach Matt Rhule.
Just an injury update, and you might have to help me with this. Luke Ryan will be back with us this week, so excited to have Luke back. Other than that, I think we're a pretty healthy team. Deshaun Singleton's will still be out, but we're excited to have Luke back. Obviously, he'll be a big boom for our defense. So, big week for us, huge week for us. Playing an excellent Northwestern team, 3-3. Unbelievable comeback win over Minnesota, down I think it was 31-10. Coach Braun's doing a fantastic job. So, it'll be a heck of a ball game. Excited to have a chance to play them. Excited for this week. Excited to see our players after the bye week. So, I'm sure you guys have lots of questions.
How much football did you get to watch this weekend? And when you look at the Big Ten West, I mean, what kind of opportunity is out there for you guys to put your name in this thing over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the big picture. I think that's the problem with Nebraska football. I think that's why we've gone 1-5 down the stretch most years. Looking at things outside of just going 1-0 this week, evaluating the offensive, defensive coaches, evaluating the offense versus all this stuff outside the program. I'm going to do my best to keep it from infiltrating the program. We've got to get a way to get 1-0 this week. We've got to try to improve this week. It's going to be a real challenge. So, to me, I had a chance to watch the teams we play. I was really happy to see Illinois play well. Because that obviously anytime we play someone, we beat them, and then we see them play well, it makes us feel good about who they are. I saw Northern Illinois go get a huge win over a 5-1 Ohio U team. So, I feel good about where our team is, but our team has got to eliminate the looking past just what's important this week. When we got embarrassed at Michigan, we didn't think about anything else other than Friday night, and we were locked in. And we're going to find out about myself as a head coach and our coaches and our players and our staff. Can we have that same focus this week? We better.
There's been a few times you've mentioned kind of the big picture and not looking ahead and all that. I mean, has that surprised you how much Husker fans can look at the big picture and always kind of taking stock of their team?
Well, I love Husker fans. Let me say that. Okay, I'm talking about the team. The only reason why we have the opportunities we have is because there's so much care about the program. I just have to make sure our players don't act like fans. They act like the guys that are going to go out and play. And so if you're not careful, then all these things start to infiltrate the team. And so I go back and I just look at history. Okay, you look at the team. Look at Nebraska football over the last 8 to 10 years in the second half of the season. It's abysmal. Okay, and that's not a knock on anyone. I respect the heck out of those. Those are good coaches, but we can't be the type of team that we lose. We lost to Colorado. We're embarrassed. We come back. We win. We play okay. Not very great against La Tech, right? Then we go out, we get embarrassed against Michigan. Now we're embarrassed. Now we can play great against Illinois. We just can't be that team. I don't want to coach that team, and our players don't want to be a part of that team. So that's what it is. And at the same time, there's this thing out there that I can hear, right, about is this coach doing they're all doing a good job. This program's not in good shape. They're all doing a great job, I think. And so I'm in charge of this football program. Sat would love to go no huddle and score 50 points. Tony would love to blitz every play. I run the program. And so we're playing as a team. So all that other stuff, it's why we haven't been to a bowl game. We're the only Power 5 team that hasn't been to a bowl game in a long time. So if I start talking about bowl games, I'm part of the problem. So the fans are supposed to do this. My daughters, Dad, if we go to a bowl game, can I have Taylor Swift? My daughters are fans, right? They're supposed to do that. I just got to get the team to be really locked in to today, tomorrow. Because think about Coach Braun, the job that he's done. He comes from North Dakota State, takes this job at Northwestern. He's the DC. Coach Fitzgerald, great friend of mine, a man I respect, gets let go. He steps in as the interim head coach. He's on a 1-year deal, and he's got this team battling, man. They're fighting for their lives. What are we doing? What are we going to be like? We'll find out on Saturday. So that's the message I put out there usually on Mondays when I feel this, because I want our players to have that mentality, but they will. I want our staff, and I hope our fans come to this game as locked in and as thinking this game is as important as anything else, because I respect the team we're playing, and I respect the coaching staff. To be in the situation they're in, to be down 21 points and to fight back, man, that says a lot about the character. We better have the same character. So.
Have you heard that from players, veterans on the team that you've talked to about previous seasons, that there has been a lack of focus on what's directly in front of them and more on the future, or is that just something that you've diagnosed from looking at scores?
I talk to the players a lot. And I've talked to them a lot in the off season. I'll meet with a bunch of during the week. The thing that I've done, I think, better than I normally have is after the first 2 weeks, I spend a lot of time one-on-one with players, and so they've kind of given me a lot of things, right? But I can also just kind of feel it in my daily conversations with like the people in our building, right? People love to send me like memes from Twitter, like hey, look, coach, there's a picture of you. It's just not healthy for the team. This is a team that has to learn how to be the same team every week, right? Isn't that what you guys all want? You guys want to come watch us play badly on Saturday? Like, we want to be the same team every week. And so that's a level of, that's hard to do. Either you're so talented you don't have to do that. There's some teams that are so talented they have to get up for 3 or 4 games. We have to get up for every game. We had to battle to beat Northern Illinois. We had to battle to beat La Tech. We're not in that place yet. We got to fight, scratch, and claw. So the players have kind of addressed a lot of these things with me. I'm not worried about the players as much as I'm worried about like our staff and coaches and all them. Like we have to lead the way. I have to lead the way. I have to wake up this week feeling that same. Now, I woke up after that Michigan game, Mitch. I felt sick to my stomach that whole week. I woke up after the Colorado game. I felt like someone was standing on my chest. I don't want to walk around this week happy. I better have the same urge to go 1-0 this week. But this is not about, hey, Northwestern. This is just about the program in general. I'm trying to do a good job of addressing it to people, because I went to Tacoma this summer and I spoke, and there was a 97-year-old woman that waited in line to meet me. And so when I think about Husker fans, I think about her, and I don't want her like, she waited in line to meet me. That's embarrassing to me. And I just want us to be that type of a team that, like, when you come to see us play, you know what you're going to get. And so that's the challenge for us these last 6 games, not to worry about what comes after them, but just to worry about how we do them.
Coach, this rivalry between matchup between Northwestern and Nebraska, it's been a lot of close games in recent years. I mean, have you looked back at some of those close games, some of the games?
Yeah, I watched the 2021 game, and I watched last year's game a lot. I watched both those games a lot, right? I thought what Coach Frost and the offensive staff did 2 years ago was phenomenal. Thought Martinez was amazing. I mean, a lot of great things happened. They played great defense. Obviously, last year was a hard-fought battle back and forth. But, they have a new defensive coordinator, right? There's just not a lot of things that translate, so it's all kind of new. So those are more like off-season studies for me. I get in the game week, I usually try to go back and watch personnel. Coach Vokalek is there, who was here, so obviously he'll know our personnel. So I try to go back and watch their players versus our guys a little bit. But for the most part now I have 6 games on them versus really good competition, 2 top 25 teams that they've played. They're just a lot like us.
Yeah, now that Jeff Sims is close to healthy 100%, how do you manage the quarterback situation this week and in the game?
Yeah, I think we're working hard to get Jeff to be the best that he can be. We're working hard to get Heinrich and Chuba to be the best that they can be. We'll play with Heinrich, for now. Jeff just ready to go on a moment's notice. Sometimes we mix him in with the ones a lot in practice. I would have no problem ever having a package to play 2. I'm not saying we would do that, but I have no problem with the way he works. But to me, Heinrich's played well. Heinrich's done some good things, and so he'll be the starter.
Were you able to, in a week, work on maybe improving him, but also improving the things that you guys can do with him and getting plays that help him to be the best he can be?
Yeah, I think we were able to go back and really identify what he does well. Because when you build something, you usually build it around who you anticipate the starter to be. And so, hey, what are the things that not only is he comfortable with when you watch the tape, hey, he's doing this pretty well. And then what are some of the plays that we've kind of fell into, like, hey, these are good plays for us. What are the plays that come off that? And at the same time, having to simplify a great deal with a bunch of freshman receivers now going to be playing. So it's kind of this unique, hey, we have, we're down to the 3rd and 4th string tailback to start the year at least. right? We're down to some young wideouts, and we're also new quarterback. Hey, what do they all do well? And we have enough good players to win with, so just trying to find out what they do well. But I think Heinrich had a really good week last week. He was still a little beat up from that game. That was a hard-fought game. He went out there and battled each day to practice last week. So did Jeff. So I think we have a good feel as a team, right? Like, hey, what do those guys do well?
I know you said Emmett felt terrible about that fumble, but he had a couple of nice plays before that. What would you say about just his progress at that running back spot and maybe what he can do in the second half?
Yeah, Emmett can play for us. I think Emmett's a good player. Emmett, we ran a counter with him, and he knifed up the field and got 6 or 8 yards. I mean, I think he shows quickness and toughness and burst. Excellent protection, can catch the football. We just have to protect the football, and he has to protect the football. Obviously, his was on an exchange. It wasn't a pure fumble. So, kind of going back to what Sam just talked about, right? Like, hey, Heinrich wasn't taking a lot of reps with Emmett for a couple weeks, right? Now just getting them kind of synced up together on some of those plays. But Emmett can really help us.
In general, is there a points per game threshold that you've identified that it takes to win games in the Big Ten that you would feel good about reaching?
I would never think about that.
When it comes to
like just so you guys know me, because you're here. What I'm like, we were playing Illinois, and I was like, hey, they're not going to move the ball against us today. I don't care if we run the ball every play and punt, and like that's just what you get when I'm coaching. It's 25-mile-an-hour winds. Last thing that can be is a batted ball, right? Like, we're going to play that way. So I want to score one more than the other team. But that might be old school and kind of boring nowadays, but it'll result in good things in the long run.
Do you hear that narrative that you hear it a lot? You hear the Big Ten West is down, that it's bad. How do you react to that? Do you have any reaction to it?
I have none. Yeah, I mean, this is my first time going through it, and then Big Ten West will be gone next year anyway. So I literally was a young coach, because I don't want you guys to think I'm always just like coach speak. I was a young coach, head coach at Temple, and I sat down at a table at the retreat with all the American Conference coaches were there. George O'Leary, who I really looked up to, was there, and UCF was rolling at the time, and he was going to become the AD. And I was like, yeah, coach, we play. I forget what year it was. I was like, well, we play Penn State, but then we got Cincinnati, and he was like, Matty. He's like, just play them one at a time. And you hear that? But the teams I thought were going to be really good that year actually were pretty down. And the teams I thought were going to be down that year were really pretty good. And so I think we face good teams each week. I think it's a battle each week. I just think there's always the narrative out there. Like, people watch the Iowa-Wisconsin game and say it's a bad football game or it's an ugly football game. I think it's a beautiful defensive football game. And I see a lot of teams that scored a lot of points early in the season in games this week, and not quite scores quite as many points as the year gets on and people catch up and it gets a little colder. So, Iowa's on its way to having another great year. And people are making a big deal about how many points they score. They're scoring one more than their opponent most games. So I think I don't know anything about the Big Ten West other than I'm facing each one each year. And after the year, I'll probably have a better feel for, kind of who everyone is. And then we'll shuffle it up and we'll be going to the West Coast, and I'll do my best to figure that out.
Man, what kind of lift does Luke give you, not just performance-wise and maybe leadership, but give you another veteran voice out there?
No, Luke is one of the voices. Even before last game, I texted him, on the day of the game, like, hey, bro, I wish you were with us, man. I feel so awful about what happened to him, got MRSA in his arm, and just, got an infection. And, he was like, hey, I already sent a message to the guys. They're ready, coach, He's a voice that the guys listen to, and so when he speaks, I think it goes a long way. And as a player, he's really going to help us. He's excellent off the ball, and this is a team, Northwestern, that can spin it, and they can also run it, and they have athletic quarterbacks. So we'll need Luke's athleticism out there.
How much do all three of the freshman receivers factor in this week now that you've had some more time and your situation a little better?
Yeah, Malachi's a starter. He'll start. The great thing about Malachi is he didn't have much time to think about it. Like, unfortunately, Marcus went down and Malachi had to run out there and play, and so he played well. I mean, he's got things that he does differently that we have to adjust. The things that he loves to do, like we have to factor some of that in. Jalen Lloyd's going to play a ton. Jaden Doss is still kind of in the middle. When you're a freshman receiver and you don't practice for whatever it was, 5, 6, 7 weeks, that's difficult. The other guys practice, but Jalen's ready to go. Malachi's ready to go. And what I saw from them last week, Sean, was I saw them they showed up last week. They knew okay, it's time to play. Saw Quentin Ives, he showed up. He said, hey, it's time to play. And Jaden showed up too. I'm not sure exactly where Jaden will fall on this whole thing, but the great thing about the last game is, I think Alex Bullock has figured out that he's a really good player. 4th and 3, he makes an unbelievable catch. He makes a great catch on the slant. He's got long speed, and then Ty Hahn made a big play for us. So I think, Heinrich's developing a real rapport with those guys as well.
When you're down some skill players and you have inexperience at quarterback, how much more do you want to lean on your offensive line? How did you feel like that group played over the first 6 games? Where can they improve?
I think our offensive line has gotten better and better and better. I think they are one of the groups that I'm going to speak for them. I think they're one of the groups that's really been scarred they're scarred still by the things that are said about them out there, and they hear it. They probably were hearing it too much and not having a lot of fun playing. And I think that they, in the last 2 weeks, have really kind of gotten past that a little bit. I think they, I just don't. When you run the ball for 200 yards a game, no matter how you get it, you don't do that if guys aren't playing well. If tight ends aren't blocking, if guys aren't running. I think the biggest thing that I've seen improvement in is our pass protection. We're getting better and better and better in pass pro. We're not here to throw the ball 45 times a game. So, but we're getting better in those regards. But I like our offensive line. I like the amount of things that they see, the amount of things that people throw at us because we don't throw it a ton. The amount they blitz us. They are unsung heroes to me.
One thing that's changed in college football the last 5 years is the presence of Pro Football Focus scores, and they haven't always scored well in that area, the offensive linemen. How much have you had to tell them to just, hey, push that out, not worry about it, don't listen to the noise about what your grades are on some website?
Yeah, I just say this: if you go back and listen to anything I've said when I was in the NFL, I talked about that being the number one thing that affects players in the National Football League, is those grades, because people listen to them, right? And I would just say that if I went and graded our O-line and Donnie graded our O-line and Sack graded our O-line, we would all come out sometimes with different scores. So I'm not going to listen to other people. And I mean that with the greatest deal of respect, So I don't look at the grades of other teams. I don't say this guy, let's go after this guy. He's a 64. So it's just one more cottage industry built up around the sport. You know what I'm saying? And they've done a good job. And we use PFF for video and stuff. We use it it's amazing what they do in terms of hey, show me every pass thrown to the left quadrant on 3rd and 7. I'm like a geek on that stuff. But in terms of the scores, the qualitative data, I'm not going to pay attention to that. Again, don't we just want our players to go out there and fight to play? I struggle with, you can tell, I'm always going to defend my players and my coaches. I struggle with the fact that these players are here to get Nebraska football over the hump, because it hasn't been over the hump, and these coaches are here. When I go in for my heart exam and my doctor tells me I have calcium, I don't yell at the heart doctor. You know what I'm saying? I don't yell at the guy trying to fix the problem. So why would anyone say anything bad about the kids that are out there playing to try to get us back to a bowl game? Why would anyone say anything about the coaches that are trying? That's crazy to me. So I see the impact it has on young people. It's devastating to them. It really is. Most of my job is about, hey guys, ignore the noise, ignore it, ignore what people are saying about you, and that. I'm having to do that a little bit in recruiting sometimes too. Coach, why well, I don't know. Do the recruits need to hear everyone talk about that we're not good at this and not good at that? I don't know. So it's the job. It's challenging. I relish this. I'm not complaining about it. Everybody has a job to do. Fans have, but I'm proud of our players, and I say this so that they hear it, their parents hear it, and a PFF score does not determine who they are. Ethan Piper's out there playing with a broken hand. Right, he's pass protected number 4 from Illinois, who's going to be a first-round draft pick with a broken hand, and we won the game. I'd hug the guy, not grade him.
Well, you got a chance to in a paragraph or two. Why are grades, when you say you might have different grades? Why? Why the disparity?
Because it's one thing to say hey, he's supposed to down block and he did, and he gets a minus for that, right? But it's hard to move. It's hard to move people in football, right? They get on they're on scholarship too. So, it's all just subjective. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's a moving target. It's just subjective. So if I don't trust myself enough to do it all the time, I know what I kind of see, and I'm like, hey Donnie, we want this here. Hey Sat, we want this here. Hey Tony. If I can't do it, then I'm certainly not going to listen to anybody else. I live this. I don't do anything else but this. And occasionally a girls' volleyball game with my daughters. This is all I do. So it's just really subjective. And again, it makes for great theater. I just want our players I want our players walking in this building thinking about going 1-0 and worrying about what their teammates think and what they think. At the same time, I want us to go out there and have an unbelievable crowd on Saturday that's proud of the way we play. I just, just can't live your life on Twitter.
Like you said, you've been locked in.
So Jeff Sims is back, healthy enough to play. He was the starter at the beginning of the year, but Matt Rhule saying the Huskers will continue to go with Heinrich Harbaugh under center, at least for this week's game against Northwestern. As for Indiana, Huskers have lost 2 in a row, giving up 52 to Michigan, giving up 44 the week before in that loss to Maryland. The good news for Indiana, Tom Allen's team returns home this weekend. The bad news, taking on a Rutgers squad that is now just 1 win away from bowl eligibility. Let's head to Bloomington for more on this one. Here is the head Hoosier, Tom Allen.
Yeah, Tom, I know you're not satisfied with how either of them have played, Taven or Brendan, but are there positive traits that you've seen with them, whether it's in games or practices, that you feel like you can build off of? And then I guess, like you've mentioned, Dexter getting closer, like how does he factor into that?
Yeah, I think that there's no question that both have positive traits, and you just want to see more consistency, and I think that's the key, for us to be able to do that as a staff, to help them with that, and in both the game plan and the calls and the way that they're going to operate, and that's going to be a real big goal for this week is that consistency, and to being able to continue to narrow things down to the areas where they can really, which they've shown we got enough on film now to know what we can, do well. Just got to continue to improve, throw the football better, got to be able to continue to run the football better. Did a little bit of both of those things on Saturday, not consistently enough to be able to get where we want to be. And then you think about Dexter, to me, he's progressing, and he'll be a guy that's each week has grown in his ability to be ready. And so that's even more so this past weekend, and he obviously dressed and was ready to be in an emergency situation if need be. And so, yeah, he's getting closer and closer.
When you look at the second half struggles, I guess, last Saturday, but also kind of throughout the last few years, is there anything you can kind of single out maybe that, it's not like every game's the same problem, but is there maybe one thing you can point to that maybe keeps on showing up each week for some of these second half struggles that you've had?
Well, the ones here, recently, I would say, just really, when you go through and you watch, especially you think about the defense. So it was some critical mistakes and critical downs, really to me kind of jumped out to us on Saturday. And then the positive things you do prior to that get negated, when you make a mistake and you don't contain the quarterback on a critical third down, or your DB comes off a receiver when he's scrambling and leaves this guy, open, or you don't make a proper check adjustment, when they, line up in a certain formation, they're going fast. I think one thing is, you got a lot of, continue. I know we're second half of the season now, but you still had, we went through and in our base package, 10 of our 11 guys that played on Saturday had never played at Michigan before, 9 of 11 in our sub package. And so it's a lot of guys with a lot of new faces, a lot of new opportunities, a lot of new individuals in those moments. And there's several on offense as well, So I think just the consistency of that execution at critical times when, teams do things that maybe it's a little different than you expect, or you go through and try to make those adjustments at halftime and make sure that everybody that's the ones and the twos all, get those same adjustments and are able to execute those, and because you never know who's going to be in there in those certain plays. So I just think to continue to grow that, just got to continue to adapt to that. So I think as we continue to focus on what can we do to simplify and still not be, too simple to where you guys can't give multiple looks to the opponent. So on both sides of the ball. So it comes back to us, as coaches, continuing to streamline what we do, I think in a lot of ways, and be able to help our guys, finish better. Obviously, it gets a team like that makes you pay right away for a mistake is costly, without question. And then it gets that momentum and it kind of works against you. There's a window of time in that second quarter where it kind of, things, shifted against us and we weren't able to stop that, So, but at the same time, some of those were self-inflicted. Some of those things are just tough calls that go against you or whatever, however that works out, and you got to be able to respond, So, but at the same time, to me, it's learning and growing from that and being able to recognize we have a lot of football ahead of us, and we absolutely do, and that's the whole focus for me, is being able to adjust to things, adapt to what we're going to be able to do, make some decisions, maybe make some hard decisions, and then go with it and roll with it and let our guys go play. Because I think we've shown enough glimpses of things that we can become, and it has to be consistent. And that's going to be the focus on both sides of the ball and special teams.
You mentioned mistakes defensively. Some of those mistakes seem like they might be
Do you believe there's a trust issue with the defense? Because it seems that oftentimes those mistakes are coming when guys are trying to do other people's jobs than worrying about themselves.
Yeah, I think there was, we targeted 3 or 4 guys that we felt like, had not been in that kind of maybe big moment stadium situation and tried to do way too much. Just do your job. And I think there's no question. I don't know if it's so much necessarily trust of the guy around you, or I'm trying to make more plays myself. And you trust the system. If I just do my job, those plays will come to me. And I think that's a real, a challenge. I think you got a mindset of, hey, I want to do this to be able to create, future things for myself, and that's great. But when you play within the system and you do your job, those plays come to you, I believe. And so convincing a young guy of that is part of our responsibility, and also convincing new guys of that haven't been here for a long time to understand that and to trust that part of the system. And so, because I think the guys have done a good job. We prepared well last week. I thought we practiced well, had a good walkthroughs, good focus prior to that. But you're right, when you get in that moment, can I just trust the system enough to say, if I do my job, I'll make the plays I'm supposed to make, and then the team will have great success. So I do think that's a good way to phrase that.
Tom, it seemed like for the first few weeks of the season, the offensive line had kind of made some positive steps coming out of last season. At the midpoint of this year now, I guess, what do you feel like you and Coach Bostad are getting out of that group?
Well, I want to see it continue to elevate, for sure. I do think that Matt Bedford probably played his best game, this past weekend. So seeing growth there, getting him healthier all the time. And as a collective group, as they continue to mesh and gel and work together. So obviously going against really good fronts and going to go against another really good front this week. And so just got to continue to develop. And I think even just kind of made some, adjustments and try to add some things to what we want to become, up front, even in the run game, and saw some positive returns on that. I want to keep building off of that. And obviously the second half of the season needs to be their best, and so we've had a chance to kind of get those guys solidified in where they're at and where they're playing in those consistent spots. And I want to see them, take these next 6 games and allow us to really be a unit that's on the rise. And because that's really going to be the key for us on both sides of the ball. D-line, O-line, continue to, as we got a lot of new faces on D-line this year, and O-line's now had a chance to be together for several games and have that continuity. And so I expect them to continue to play better and better. So obviously who you play has a big say-so on that. And bottom line is we got to do a continuously good job as a staff of just fundamentals and techniques, things we do well, keep building off of that. And to me, that's going to be the focus this whole week and these last half of our season.
Tom, the Aaron Casey going into the season, there's a lot of expectations on his performance. He certainly has played well. Can you just talk about the way he has played and what you're getting from him?
Yeah, he continues to be one of our leaders that we need to continue to step up and play well, lead well. He continues to make plays at critical times for us to get a key tackle for loss. He had a couple sacks, caused a fumble that we didn't get. We had 2 fumbles. We didn't get either one of those. But has a great passion for what he does. Love his consistency. Love how he practices, the way he handles himself. I can pull aside, talk to about when the guys come off the field or even during the week. And just, a guy that knows who we are, believes in who we are. And it's just been here. As we've known, we've talked about his growth and what he's become. And so I just want to, once again, I'm challenging our guys. We want to continue to be a unit. So we want the linebackers to be a unit that's on the rise. We want our defense to be able to make some adjustments here. When you play against, an offense of that caliber with that elite of a quarterback, you got to be darn near perfect, or else he'll make you pay. So those linebackers, they got to own that to get everybody lined up right and checks and adjustments, and he's doing a lot of good things with that. We just got to continue to get the whole group to play at his level of consistency and his level of execution each and every week. So you got to have great linebackers, and I think he's a very, very special one for sure. And I want to see him have his best next 6 games as he finishes out his the final phase of the regular season of his career here.
This might be a question more about Taven than Brendan. Do you worry about kind of the last 7 games kind of impacting his confidence or development kind of going forward with having gone back and forth and maybe having him look over his shoulder? Do you worry about that lingering going forward? How has kind of the psyche of that room been, kind of the last couple of weeks in particular?
Yeah, I think that, the goal obviously would be to you pick a guy and every game he just continues to improve and grow and so obviously at every position if you have a guy that is continuing to do that, then that progresses the way you like for it to be, and if that's not, then you may make a change, and so bottom line is that position I get has a little more to it, and there's a lot of pressure on it, a lot of expectations, and that person is different than every other spot, I understand, and so but everybody has to perform as well, and so whoever that is, I want those guys to know that, and yeah, there's no doubt they feel that pressure, and you don't want any guy in a position to look over your shoulder, but you also have to look forward and make plays and be a guy that's doing the things that you need to do for whatever position is, and so bottom line is that I want those guys to feel that, they have to embrace that and want that and be able to do everything they can to play their best on game day, and so at the end of the day it's performance-based assessment, and so trying to do a great job with that and allowing them to be able to grow and develop, and but we have to evaluate it and make decisions from there. So whoever the guy is and how that moves itself forward is the fact that we want to make sure those guys understand the game plan, execute the game plan, and put the team, as a coach does and as a player does in that position, that it has to be able to rise up and take on that responsibility. And so obviously it's a tough position to play, and you get a lot of scrutiny, good and bad, and you have to be able to handle all that and the ebbs and flows of that position and what it demands. And so I think that's something, and they're both young, and so that's not easy to do without question. But at the same time, we spend a lot of time with those guys, and I feel like that they're mentally in a good place, but there's at the same time you want to make sure that they continue to play, better each week, and that's the goal for that position and all our positions.
So Tom Allen not quite ready to make a call on who his starter will be moving forward. Sorsby or Jackson says we will make a decision, but not right now. Both quarterbacks have made mistakes. It's about protecting the football, moving the ball downfield. The guy they pick will be the quarterback moving forward for the rest of the year. Easy to say now. Of course, things change as the situation changes. What a comeback for Rutgers. Scarlet Knights didn't look good early, down 24-6 going into the fourth quarter. Rutgers outscores Michigan State 21-0. Couple of huge special teams plays in that fourth quarter as the Scarlet Knights come back to win it 27-24. That is win number 5 this season. The emotions clear to see on Greg Schiano's face. His team now 1 win away from bowl eligibility, and they will try to pick up that win this week. The rest of the schedule in November, awfully daunting, making this Saturday's matchup in Bloomington against Indiana all that more important for Schiano and the Scarlet Knights. Let's head to the banks. Here is the Rutgers head coach.
Big week. Looking forward to going out to Indiana. I've had a chance to watch them now some last night and today. They have a good football team. You look at the 4 teams they've lost to, combined they've lost 3 games the whole season. So, you look at the way they played University of Michigan, you look at the way they played against Ohio State, Louisville. They're a good football team that has come up short a little bit. It just read where Coach Allen said they're going to settle on one quarterback and stick with him. So there's some things that we're not sure of. There's some things that we know we have to get ready for, and we're going to do that. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
You just mentioned the quarterback situation. What do you see from those 2 guys on film that they've been kind of rotating through?
Well, they're both really good players. They both can throw it very well. They're both athletic. I don't know. It's going to be a challenge, whoever lines up back there. But knowing who starts the game, that'll be the guy. Then we just got to be ready for both.
They're in a bit of a similar situation as you guys were last year in the sense of rotating quarterbacks. They fired their offensive coordinator at the bye week. What do you remember? What were the challenges of that experience that you remember from last year? And is there anything that you could take from that experience to your advantage this week game playing against them?
No, I think every situation's totally unique and totally different. And without being there, I have no idea what their situation is. So, no, I really don't think I can.
Cal Monungai is leading the Big Ten in rushing. Did you expect that coming into the season, or is that a little bit of a surprise to you?
Well, it's not a surprise that he's doing well. You never know how it's going to pan out, right? But I think what Kyle is a great representation of is this is his 4th year in the program.
He's developed year after year. He's gotten stronger. He's gotten better as a football player. He's matured, and now he's he's a grown man playing running back. And I look back at over the history of the program, whether it was Ray Rice or it was Brian Leonard or it was Pop, very, very aggressive physical backs, downhill backs that run violently, and he fits right into that category of guys that, as they developed, became more and more violent downhill runners.
Coach, I know you've had some different looks on the offensive line in terms of personnel as the season has gone on. What do you make of how that group has been able to sort of get into a rhythm, with those changes and just how they've progressed as the season has gone on?
I don't know if the rhythm has anything to do with it. I think what's happening is cumulative repetitions is starting to take a hold, and we're getting better. It's slow progress, but we are getting better. And as I've said, it's just got to continue. And there's some guys that are right on the cusp behind them. Young guys that are figuring out how to play. So it's definitely arrow up, but it's not as fast as I'd like it to be. But that's life.
What kind of progress or maybe a step of maturity have you seen with this team in the way that in a game maybe things aren't going the way that you want it to? It looks like things are getting out of control, but they're kind of able to put the brakes on and get back on track. I mean, because last season obviously sometimes things had a tendency to spiral a little bit. But it seems
I think it's leadership. I think the leadership, again, they keep talking about it, and I don't want to bore you, but it's that pipeline. And now we have more guys towards the back end of the pipeline that have been in the program for 3.5 years, understand the culture inside out, have paid the price, off season, spring, summer, and then in season. And the cumulative effect, those cumulative repetitions, not only of game reps and practice reps, but the winter program and all those things that make you mentally tougher, physically stronger. So when push comes to shove, those guys got to lead the program, right? There's a bunch of young guys that are playing out there. They don't know. So who do they follow? They follow the leaders. And we have some guys right now that I'm really encouraged when our guys follow them.
I know the answer to this question is probably chop, but coming off an emotional week and just getting the team to focus, how do you do that just given everything that went into Saturday's game?
You throw the Indiana tape on all three phases, and that gets your attention in a hurry. You look at, first off, Tom Allen is an excellent football coach. I've known Tom for a while now. He's a great coach. He's a great person in his program. I know Rod Carey, who's now the offensive coordinator, is an excellent coach. The line coach, Bob Bostad, was my line coach down in Tampa. So they're a well-coached football team. Tom's so heavily involved in the defense, and you can see it. It's just they make you really check every box in your preparation because they bring pressure from everywhere. They bring line movements that are hard to block. They rush secondary guys. And they have good players. Like their D-line is unique. 7 of the 8 two deep are transfer guys. And, you look at it and you say, well, when I heard that, I read it before I always read the write-up before I throw the tape on. I read the write-up. I expected to see a disjointed group, all that just came together. Far from it. They look like they've been coached by the same coach for a long time. They all play with pad level. They're stout. Casey, 44. He's one of the top 5 linebackers in the league. How do you rank him? There's a lot of good linebackers, including ours, in this league. But he's really good. He's strong. He's fast. He's tough, instinctual. And then the secondary has a bunch of first-year starters, but they are playing well together. Whoever's coaching that group is doing a great job. I'm not that familiar with exactly how their staff works, but I think it all comes back to Coach Allen. He runs that defense, and I've seen him. When I was down in Tampa, he was down at South Florida, and I was doing TV at the time, and I went over to watch one of their practices, and I didn't know Tom Allen from a hole in the wall, and I just watched him coach. I said, that guy, he's really good. You could see it back then, and it would have been 2014. It was the first time I saw him, but and then offensively, Rod Carey, he's a seasoned coach, been a head coach at 2 different places, and he's an Indiana guy, Indiana grad. You can see already in just one game, they had a bye week in one game, but you can see some of the stuff he used to do at Northern Illinois, some of the stuff at Temple. And, you know, it's mid-season, so how much you're really going to be able to change. But you can see his influence. So again, I think player-wise, their center is number 50 is a really good player. The receiver, number 6, I think his name's Camper. Yeah, it is Camper. He really catches your eye when you're watching him. And then their old quarterback, McCulley, number 1, is playing wide out, and he's a big athlete. So there's a lot of things that you have to defend offensively, schematically, and then personnel-wise. So how do you get their attention? Throw that tape on and point those things out and say, look, we're going on the road, and it's going to be a challenge. You go on the road in the Big Ten, right, and against a good, well-coached, talented football team. We got our hands full. And we're going to have a great week of preparation because they do challenge you many ways schematically as well as physically.
Coach, your team so far this year has outscored opponents 79-34 in the fourth quarter. What do you think the key is to having those kinds of strong finishes to games so far?
You know, I think you can draw anything you want, you know, so you can write the story however you want. I don't know that ever adds up to, are we in better shape than the other guys? I think every game takes on a life of its own. I've told you that, guy. I've told you guys that. And, you know, it just seems like some of our games have taken on that story. But the guys who are making that story happen are our players. So I'm proud of them being able to do that. But that means nothing in this Indiana season, right? All it can do is it can mean confidence that we've done it before, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen again. You have to go make it happen again. And that's one of the things, you know, to your point is you have to chop this moment. We have an opportunity to go to Indiana and be 1-0 at the end of that Indiana season. And we have to stay focused on that all week. We have to stay focused when we get on that plane to go out there and throughout until we get back on that plane.
Obviously been playing at a high level all season, week in and week out. I mean, how big has his return been for this defense, and just kind of what have you seen from the way he's been able to do this consistently?
I think Mo's doing a great job, just like you said, and I think what it does is it gives us real depth at the linebacker position. You know, instead of guys playing 70, 80, 90 plays, they're playing 50, 48, 52, and they're splitting those reps. And over time, that adds up. You know, we're playing our 8th straight week. Now, the 2 teams we just played had byes before us. This team had a bye a week ago, and we're going on our 8th straight week. If you don't have depth like that, I think those, you know, that week after week takes its toll. I think it still is taking its toll, but that helps for sure.
For the majority of the time that the Big Ten East has been a thing, it seems like it's been Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and then the rest of the division. Do you view games against teams like Indiana, Michigan State, Maryland as an opportunity of, you know, establishing the pecking order, having Rutgers climb up the hierarchy of the division? Do you view that at all as an opportunity to elevate Rutgers in that sense against the rest of the division?
I don't think of any of it that way. I think about, can we win this game? I think all those things. I think your job as a reporter is to think of that stuff, and I think it's great because that's what you do. If I get caught up in that stuff, I'm focusing on the wrong things. If I let my team get caught up in that, I think we're focusing on the wrong things because we can't control anybody else. But what we can control is how hard we work, how disciplined we live, how we study, all those things, how we take care of our academics, you know, what kind of people we are on and off the field. Like that, to me, is what we have to focus on. And I think the rest takes care of itself. And that's just the only way I've ever done things. Again, I've said it to you, and you may think I'm, you know, downplaying it, but I think if you think of things the other way, it gets too big. It's too much of a burden. I mean, if you just keep it simple, and, you know, this is what we got to do right now, I think it helps everybody involved.
College Park, site of one of the best games of the weekend. Illinois has been struggling, but picked up the kind of win that could turn things around for Bret Bielema's team late in the season. Caleb Griffin with a walk-off game-winning 43-yarder as the Illini shock Maryland during homecoming on the road to pick up maybe the biggest win of the season for the Illini. Win to start the year over Toledo, and then you see 4 losses in 5 games for Bret Bielema's team, including a really disheartening loss to Nebraska, to be able to bounce back with a win over Maryland, and now an important game, one that a lot of folks believe Bielema always has circled on his calendar as Wisconsin comes into Champaign to take on Illinois this coming weekend. We take you to Champaign right now. Here is Coach Bielema.
Yeah, just a couple updates. From an injury standpoint, Keith, Randolph, and Reggie are making progress. We'll see where they're at. They haven't been cleared yet, but hopefully get there by game time. Malik Elzy, I think, will practice with us tomorrow. And then really Tariq Barnes and Geske both really got cleared last Thursday or Friday, literally right before our trip over there. So that's why we took them, but they really hadn't got reps for 2 weeks. So they'll be fully engaged in the game plan this week. And then I know a couple of you guys probably have asked. Caden obviously came out of the game at the end, but he had no issue, just full go for practice for us moving forward. So really from the game, came out pretty healthy, to be quite honest. Got a couple guys back for this week, which is always good, and see where they're at. Obviously, this Wisconsin team has transitioned a lot. You know, we've had several rematch games. Purdue, Nebraska were both rematch games, but new staffs, right? So it's another rematch game, but obviously a totally different makeup, kind of what we saw from a year ago. There is some carry over on the defense side of the ball, but offensively, obviously new personnel, running back, obviously, but personnel used in different ways. So this is kind of a totally new opponent in that regards. Excited to get back here in Memorial, and this is our 8th week, right? So there's some things that we started doing last week in practice. I thought our guys really responded well. I did some things Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday last week to kind of increase their mental reps and decrease their physical reps, and obviously played a 4-quarter game and played really strong at the end. So we'll mirror some of that coming forward this week and go forward. So with that, congratulations to Seth and Caden, 2 guys get Big Ten Player of the Week. I think that's a huge deal and very well deserved. I thought I asked Bret after the game, are we going to nominate Caleb for the walk-off field goal or Isaiah for the 2 punt returns, and then had the Penn State kid get 2 punt returns for touchdowns, so I understand why he got it. And obviously the punter for Iowa going over 400 yards is a special treat. So too bad for those 2 guys. They couldn't get Special Teams Player of the Week, but very well deserved.
Every week is the same for you guys, but what's the key as a coaching staff when you do win? What do you emphasize to sustain?
Yeah, really stay status quo. Our schedule for Sunday really remains the same. Win or lose, I might tweak it, just because of the number of reps in a game, like the amount of time that we devote to the opponent versus the upcoming opponent. But we pretty much every Sunday kind of put the game to bed, win or lose, and then have a brief dinner break. We did have a victory meal, which I think our guys really enjoy. I know coaches enjoy as well. And then jumped into our preparation for Wisconsin. Sometimes we'll take them out on the field, depending on kind of where we are injury-wise and everything. But for the most part, that Sunday, the reason we do that is to really win or lose. You flush it and move on. And I want them to hear walking out of the building on Sunday night nothing but our next opponent, which obviously was Wisconsin. So they turn the page, and then today is a day off, but we see a lot of our kids come through, watch film, get early game plan thoughts, and obviously come over and get a lot of treatment. Some of our guys do a voluntary lift on Monday as well.
What changed for you or flipped in that timeout to go from calling field goal before half to going for
the confidence in my coaches, Barry Lunny. I asked him if he felt good about the call, and he immediately answered, said he felt great with the call. All the offensive coaches felt that way. And then, there was a little bit of a 3-headed monster going into that little scenario, right? We got really close on the pass play, so we were trying to get a read from the officials on whether or not the ball was crossed. They've gotten really hairy this year about coaches leaving the box. I was trying to get down there to ask the question, and the clock was running, and I had one timeout to use, obviously. So a little bit of that going on with the addition to if it was short, do we want to go for it? Do we want to kick the field goal? And then obviously when they called timeout, that kind of cleared everything up for us and let us go to that moment.
Position of short yardage that we talk a lot about in recent weeks. Is there any confidence carry over your offense, your coaches?
Well, you go back to last Sunday. I had a meeting. I always, meet with both sides of the ball. We meet as a staff, but then I'll sit down. And one of the things I directed staff last Sunday was we were going to put in instead of having Wednesday be our third and short and fourth and short install, I moved it to Monday, and then we repped it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And obviously the first 3rd and 1 was on the very first drive that converted, and then obviously the next play was a touchdown. And I made a big deal of that Sunday night in my presentation to the team about how we win games, and a lot went into that prep and a lot went into the results.
Do the, maybe more mental reps, a little fewer physical reps. Is it always, are you always looking at that midpoint of the season, or do you adjust for the team or schedule? Or?
Yeah, I think as a head coach, it's one of the things that I think like today, I had 3 sheets laying in front of me of kind of tomorrow's practice schedule, and I'd kind of gone back and forth several times with what I wanted to do was trying to tweak it between, 2 or 3 different things. And obviously when they called timeout, that kind of cleared everything up for us and let us go to that moment. a certain number of periods and a certain number of walkthrough periods, and Mark Torson, our chief of staff, he came in, and I think he saw all 3 sheets, and I kind of went with one, but I modeled it a lot off of what we did last year in week 8 a little bit. There's a little bit of carryover from where you've done things in the past, but really it's about this year's team, right? And last year and last week in particular, we had those 2 freshman running backs. We knew they were going to be probably the guys on Saturday, so we wanted to get a lot of good early down reps with them, so we kind of increased the number of early down reps and minimized the number of third down reps that they took. So it's a little bit of give and take each week, to be quite honest. But yes, you do all year long kind of taper as you get going. And then obviously coming out of the bye week, we'll use a little bit different schedule because we'll get an extra day of preparation or a couple days of preparation for that as well.
Yeah, the game plan and really the execution offensively, was that more indicative of the identity that you want to have as an offense?
You talking about this past week? Yeah, well, anytime you have success, that's an easy answer, right? But I do think Barry in particular, felt really good going into the game. Talked about things the week after that, obviously out of the Nebraska game, and I think early on we kind of, the way Reggie was moving around, and obviously we knew we weren't going to have Josh. I said, hey, let's just go with the game plan of we're going to have Caden and Aiden as the availability, and Fidanzo as the running back tandem, and let's go from there. We devised a game plan, and anytime he gained 12 yards on the first play, it was a pretty impactful play, and then had a nice mix on that first series of some run and pass, and then I think the 3rd and 1 that converted into the touchdown the next play really had a huge part. And then we scored on series 1, 6, 7, and 8 of 12 series, right? So 6 was the one right at the end of the half, obviously, that resulted, and that was directly from a guy of ours stripping the ball out. Kanena recovered it, and then we had an end of half series, and then we came out and double dipped. And I kind of knew Locks, like we've said, I knew they put a huge emphasis. He comes from the same coaching tree as I about kind of the Belichick, Saban double dipping. That's a big thing with those guys, and I knew what I was trying to do, and I also knew what they were trying to do.
Coach, I know Wisconsin is the focus, of course, but you got 5 conference games left. A lot of things still available to you. Do you guys talk about that at all? As a team?
Yeah, I think. But anytime on Sundays, as a head coach, I usually. I at the end zone in on what we're doing, but I do take a picture about where we're at, what we're doing, whether it's win or lose. We talk about it. I think that where we're at right now, to be a 3-4 football team, I was more emphasis on what we got to do to take care of this week than anything else. Kind of like when we're in that little bit of a stretch of adversity too. Like the best thing you can do is focus on the now, and that gets you to where you want to be.
There was 30 times on Saturday.
What's that?
30 times on Saturday where the guy who touched the football on offense, the center, the quarterback, and the skill guy was not more than 20 years old. Do you think about the youth that you have right now? And I know you have a standard for it.
It's a great PFF stat. You had to research that. You had to do some work on that.
But I know you have a standard for you want them in week 8, but is there excitement about where they could be?
I think it was very apparent to me, right, when we got into fall camp. I remember, I think I've said this in here, we got a room of 120 guys, and 40 of those guys had never been with us before, right? And really about half of our travel roster is all new, right? As many veteran players as we had coming back, you take a guy like Miles Scott, who'd been with me for 2 years, but this is his first year at free safety, and there's just little things like that in retrospect, I needed to be a lot cleaner about how we approach the game, on how we teach it and what we do. I think that's a balance that you always got to be aware of as a head coach, but we do have a lot of youth that's playing extremely well. I tell you what, to see Dylan Rosiak play the way he has the last couple of weeks, Kanena Olaga, he made a recovery there at the end of half. That end of half drive never happens if I can't tell you who stripped it. Taz says he does it. Johnny said he did it, and Dylan Rosiak said he did it. So regardless, the ball came out, and then that big man was jumping on it, and you see Kanena just literally, if you zoom in on that, it's amazing that he gets that ball out of there, and he's just got a kind of a knack for that. Dylan Rosiak on the 2nd and 9 on that last series, he's one-on-one with a quarterback out in the flat, and he gets him down. There's a play, when they threw to the quarterback on kind of the reverse throwback there. I remember somebody on the headset goes, "It's wide open," and I said, "Miles is there," and Miles took a sideline skinny, which we practiced at probably 6 to 7 times during fall camp, and he just got him down, and 3 plays later, they're punting, So there's so many tangible, fundamental things that our young players are doing well. Sometimes you got to live through some things that you're going through it, but I'm also excited. Johnny and Keith. Obviously, Keith missed last week, but those 2 guys are probably playing as good a football as I've seen them play. To see Seth Coleman come along and have have the production. He actually just literally got a text from OC. I think somebody tweeted it that hadn't been done since OC had done it. So OC he sent that text to me with some wise jokes. It's fun to see the growth of some of these guys continue to get better and better. Alec Bryan is playing really, really well. Gabe had a really good week of practice. I thought he was going to kind of have one of those games. I think when he missed that sack early, that kind of frustrated him a little bit. He's so bound up. But Gabe is really, truly playing pretty good against the run, better than he's ever played. Not the production, but that stuff will come.
We were talking in the past about replacing voices from last year's team, and I'm just wondering how Casey Washington in particular has stepped into that.
You know, I would say that he's probably one of the most, in my opinion, shining examples of someone that's really literally came from when we started here. Well, obviously he left and came back, but my first year, he was battling out some PT time with Hightower a little bit, and there was kind of some going back and forth. And, I really thought last spring his game really took a big jump. And I began to talk to him about, hey, you've been through this a lot. Why don't you continue to express your voice? Because he's very intelligent, very well-spoken. Mom and Dad have raised a great kid, just really and it was interesting on Sunday. Most of the time for me, I always tell our coaches and I tell our players, I coach with my back to the bench, right? So that's a purposeful thing that I do, that I've done that my entire career. I don't turn around much. When I turn around, it's to speak and say something. But most of the time I keep my back to the bench because I have a coach. My responsibility, I think, is to manage the game. I can't imagine these coaches that don't wear headsets or don't stay engaged with what's going on, because I literally, click over and tell defensive things that are going on offense, vice versa. So it's very seldom as a head coach you get to turn around. Obviously during breaks there's a difference. But I said, hey, is there any voices on Sunday, that anybody would like to talk about or be out? And literally 3 or 4 of my coaches, both sides of the ball at the same time, said Casey Washington was unbelievable. And you can just see the confidence ooze out of him. There's a connection between him and Luke. That same play was literally the drive that it wasn't the same because the defense played a little bit different, but that same play that he caught at the end of the game, he caught at the end of the half, which gave us a big gain as well. So just a lot of confidence in that young man.
Really set a tone there early and throughout the game. What have you noticed, just personnel-wise, about that group gelling?
Practice does make a difference, to be quite honest. And Zai, that was the first time he had literally completed a week of practice in all of fall camp. Zai probably played his best game that he's played since he's been here. So for him to take a step forward, Julian's always played pretty good. Hunter, got better. I do think Geske will be back with us this week. Josh made a noticeable improvement from the last game to this game. So, yeah, there's definitely some positives that are coming forward. And I think, Isaiah Adams, every game he gets at right tackle is just making him improve. So we worked Tanner Arkin. I'm sure you saw that in the mix a little bit, and he was a nice addition in our 12 personnel and then 13 as well. So, we're getting some new faces in there and doing a good job.
Barry said he didn't have the percentage off the top of his head.
Yeah.
If you get it, pretty good chance you're going to win.
Yeah, if you double dip, and really, if you just think about the pure math of it, if you think about different football games you've either watched or been a part of, and if the offense scores 2 times without the defense going on the field, it's usually a turnover, a sudden change, right? That's how it normally happens. People don't notice it much, and because there's a halftime and a band in between, and a trip to the soda stand, right? But that's exactly what happens if you watch a game where an offense scores, and before the other offense takes the field, you get another score. It usually changes the momentum of a game, and that's kind of what it is.
Zach Toby left the game. Do you know what his status is?
Oh yeah, Zach. His was a chest. All the X-rays are negative. He's just a little bit sore, but we do expect him to be back out there. If not this week, he'll be back after the bye week.
For you personally, heading into a Wisconsin game, is there still any emotion, or is it different now that you've kind of got the reunions out of the way?
For me, with Wisconsin coming here, there's always, it was 9 years of my life. I got married in Madison. I have a lot of coaches that are on that staff that are not so much now, but they're always going to be those things. But it literally vanished as soon as I left there. I'd been through it before a couple other times, so. Luke and I have known each other for a long time. I have a lot of respect for him. Don't know a lot of his coaches, but obviously a guy that has built a lot of tradition. What he did at Cincinnati, he's continued forward there. So, just a lot of respect more than anything.
Keith on Saturday.
What's that?
Without Keith on Saturday, what did you get out of your defensive line?
Yeah, I thought Johnny, he kind of took into that role, played him kind of in that position. Bryce Barnes did a nice job. I thought Sid McConnell has just continued to really get a lot better every time. Denzel Daxon, another guy showed up. Alex Bray. We had Pat Farrell there. He didn't get in there, but Pat Farrell had a nice week of work. But I think, in particular, I think Bryce and Sed really jumped forward. You know, Johnny just continues to be very impressive. And I didn't realize his whole recruiting thing. That I found out about that midway through the week, that he had committed there and all that goes into it. So I know it was a fun week for all those guys. I think they really just enjoyed the game from A to Z, and obviously that'll carry forward hopefully in our prep against Wisconsin.
Obviously do some like pre-scouting work.
Yeah.
What are the logistics when their quarterback gets knocked out the week before? What is the early part of the
So I had watched a lot of North Carolina film specifically, right? Obviously during the spring and during the summer, and just trying to get a feel for Longo, and obviously that was a different quarterback, right? So I kind of had looked at it through that perspective, and there are some things obviously that carry over from there, but they've kind of had their own little Wisco type offense that they got going, I think, which is obviously a big responsibility on the OC, but I can see Luke's hands in certain things probably as a defensive guy. Their quarterback that came in the game, obviously he's a new quarterback, but he's had, experience, and he also, got entire second half, he's got a good feel for the game. Obviously with the running backs, when they're running the way they have, that takes a lot of pressure off them, and I think they're very good up front, and on the perimeter they got some choices. So, but I think anytime you're breaking a new quarterback, there's going to be that get to know you period that I think as coaches we have to prepare really for everything, because they haven't really showed what they can do. I think he moves really well, better than I thought, he moves better than I had hoped, I guess, and creates threats in that ball game as well.
Run game different in this offense, and what's the challenge of Braun Allen?
Yeah, you mean from what they've been? Yeah. Well, it's just totally different. It's 11. It's a lot. They have smaller personnel on the field, but a lot of their same concepts: inside, outside zone. Do some pin pull and some stuff that just still carries over. I think offensively, you've literally seen them kind of change and evolve during the course of the year. Now, anytime you play Iowa, they're a little different, right? They present such a challenge defensively. Sometimes the game plan that you see against Iowa can't carry forward to a lot of what they do. Iowa plays a lot of quarters and plays a 4-down front, which, for us, there's not a lot of carryover into the look. But obviously the Purdue game is a good one for us to take a peek at, and there's some carryover there as well, and even Washington State in some games earlier in the year.
I guess Aaron talked about what he's able to do on third down when it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. I guess, what do you notice out of him as a play caller, or just the way your defense connects?
Yeah, so, I've had a lot of defense coordinators. I think, I don't know how many I've had now, but, guys that become head coaches, Charlie Partridge, Chris Ash, Dave Dorn, and obviously Ryan. So I've known Aaron in such a different capacity, right? Like, so he literally came in my office last night, I believe, like 10:30 or so, and I had like 30 plays I wanted to show him or whatever. We went through the game, and all of a sudden I look at the clock and it's 12:30, right? And like you guys sit up here, he can just go, right? Like, because it's when I have an edit I want to watch with him, I like watching it with just he and I, right? Because I like I've been trying to grow him, like one of the things that I really like to do is with young new coordinators is kind of, grow them, work them, and from a defensive point of view, it's a little bit different than offense, but he can really go, right? Like, he can really talk, and like, so it takes us, 2 hours to get through a 30-play edit, right? Because we end up talking about it goes in this direction. But what I've noticed out of him, a play caller, his directness, his assertiveness. We changed some things around last week. I took Andy Boo out of the box and put him on the field, and I took Antonio and Grant Morgan, who's a very talented young coach, and put him upstairs. And Andy had been on the field 2 years in a row. Kevin had always been upstairs, right? And I wanted to see things in the back end. I thought Antonio, and he gave great insight. Antonio and Aaron, they've played together, right? So they have a connection. So I really like the way our staff is evolving defensively and getting to know our players. We've made some adaptations. Some of the things that we do well, some of the things we haven't done well, taking advantage of some personnel, but also not allowing them to take advantage of our personnel, like, is a big part. I think one of the things defensively you really have to be aware of more than anything is all offensive coaches look for your weakest links, right? They want to look for things they feel they can attack, and when they're doing that, you have to take notice of that because that's what they see, right? It doesn't matter what we see. I always tell them, you always got to look at it from an opponent point of view. What are they telling you your issues are, and that's what we really hone in on. Thank you.
Bret, Bielema, and the Illini returning home to take on Wisconsin. Bielema says he watched a lot of North Carolina film in the spring to get a feel for former Tar Heel OC, now Wisconsin OC Phil Longo. Anytime you're breaking in a new QB, Bielema said there's going to be that get-to-know-you period. No Tanner Mordecai moving forward for Wisconsin, so Illinois will have to be, quote, prepared for everything. What an amazingly eventful late summer and fall it has been for Northwestern. Obviously, the coaching change to start the year, the Big Ten loss to Rutgers in Game 1. Suddenly, through 6 games, no one would have expected the Wildcats to be 3-3, but that's exactly where interim head coach David Braun has this team as they get set for a weekend road trip to Lincoln and a day with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. In advance of that game, we take you to Evanston and listen in to the interim head cat, David Braun.
You know, coming off a bye week, really proud of the way that our guys handled last week. We invested in some developmental opportunities for our entire roster, but specifically our guys that haven't been seeing a ton of in-game reps, which was, you know, an incredible opportunity for us as a coaching staff and our players to continue to improve and root into techniques and fundamentals, things that we'll need to continue to lean into as we move forward. Ramped up the second half of the week, we invested the entire week last week in Nebraska prep, but really got an opportunity as the week wore along to really get into more situational football in our Nebraska prep, and then had an opportunity to have a little bit of downtime over the weekend and hopefully use that to get our bodies back and continue to get as healthy as we can as we enter into to the second half of the season. But certainly excited about the opportunity that's ahead for us out in Lincoln. Facing a very well-coached football team, a team that, certainly is starting to find its rhythm with an adjustment at the quarterback position. Big, athletic, well-coached QB that, is starting to find some rhythm and, a defense that's playing at a really high level. So big challenge for us. Wouldn't want anything less, in Big Ten football, and excited for the challenge that's ahead of us.
Coach, 2 questions for you, mostly unrelated. Do you have an injury update on Ben Bryant, AJ Henning, and Jack Lausch?
Yeah, no, we anticipate that AJ will be good to go. AJ's been practicing, as is Jack. Ben continues to progress. Not sure exactly what his status will be come game time, but he is progressing and anticipate that that's something we'll continue to evaluate as the week goes along.
And then second, now 6 weeks ago, you coached your first Power 5 football game, your first game as a head coach. At the bye week, how do you think you've grown as a head coach in this first half of the season?
Oh my gosh, feel like I've grown exponentially, simply through having no other choice. I mean, this is where your greatest growth comes, is in situations of adversity and new trials, and certainly a lot of growth still left. But there's a great group around me, a great locker room of young men. And, I've really tried to do my best to self-reflect, each and every day, each and every week on areas that I can continue to improve. And, excited about where this group is at right now, but also know that there's a lot of work ahead if we want to achieve the things that we set out to this season.
Coach, when you guys go on the road to Lincoln, it's going to be a pretty big crowd, probably the biggest you guys have seen all season, and you coming from an FCS background, just kind of how do you feel like you guys are going to have to adjust to 80,000, 90,000 kind of raring down at you from?
Yeah, it all roots back into our practice prep, and that's something, even last week, we were pumping crowd noise into all our practices, an opportunity for us. Defensively, we don't anticipate that type of crowd noise when we're on the field, but opportunity for us to root into some of our nonverbal communication, getting everybody on the same page, and a great opportunity for our offense to prepare under the environment that they're going to be playing in on Saturday. One thing I will say is, in my time at North Dakota State, I saw in that dome 20,000 people right on top of you, the impact that can have on an offense. This is certainly at a larger stage, and with many more fans involved in that process. But that's something that Coach Bajaki and Coach Anderson, our offense, has done a great job of handling in our early days of prep, and we'll continue to put them in those stressful situations as we move towards Saturday.
You have a bye week about halfway through your first season as a head coach. Did you take some time to assess how you've performed, and what kind of grade would you give yourself so far?
Oh, shoot. I don't know if it's my job to give myself a grade, but, You know what I will say is it took an opportunity to evaluate where we're at in recruiting. You know, really excited where we're at with this class, the commitments that we've held on to, and the commitments that we've gained here, you know, over the course of the last few weeks. Took it as an opportunity to really, you know, dive into self-scout both offensively and defensively, and identify where we have some tendencies and some things that we need to, you know, view ourselves how our opponents are viewing us. And then, you know, took an opportunity to, you know, spend quality time with our players over the course of the week, and you know, just check in and continue to develop our youth. But you know, I know there's a lot of room left for my own personal growth, just as there is for our entire football team, and that's what's so neat about a bye week. You get to take a deep breath, look at yourself in the mirror, take full ownership where you're at, and you know, kind of set the course for how we're going to move forward.
Coach Harbaugh, since taking over Nebraska, has really shown this dual quarterback ability, has over 400 yards rushing. What do you have to do to stop him on the ground on Saturday? Gosh,
you got to play with great leverage, and you got to tackle. I know that's oversimplified, but when you don't do that, he has the ability to be extremely explosive, has the ability to run through arm tackles, and when you lose leverage, I mean, he'll turn it into a touchdown on you. I've been really impressed with his ability to operate within the scheme and within the system, and it creates some, you know, really, I mean, you talk about +1 football. When he's carrying the ball, you better use every hat you got.
And just to follow up, does having game experience against a quarterback like Riley Leonard, a mobile quarterback, help going into this game?
You know, I think it does. You know, again, I think there's some things that, you know, I look back on specifically in terms of the way that the game was called from a defensive coordinator standpoint, from my standpoint, that, you know, I wish I had some calls back. So you take that information, you move forward accordingly, but there is nothing you know, more scary to a defensive play caller than a young man that operates the offense at a high level, has the ability to be utilized in +1 run game, and has the ability to extend plays and take off with his feet when the things break down in the passing game. And to Nebraska's credits, they've really started to find a rhythm there.
Coach, has there been an update on Richie Haggerty, and how do you feel? What's your confidence level in your defensive line to hold up against a Nebraska team that has made its bread and butter on running the ball?
Yeah, no, we anticipate that Richie will play. You know, in terms of our confidence in our defensive line, when we've been at our best defensively this year, you know, we've controlled the line of scrimmage, we've created knockback, we've been urgent to get off of blocks, and you know, when our guys play with that demeanor up front, you know, good things happen for us defensively. That's certainly the expectation. It has been the expectation, will be the expectation moving forward. I think it's a great opportunity for our guys to challenge themselves against a Nebraska team that's certainly going to look to establish a run game, and if we're not able to stop the run, it's going to be a long day for us.
Coach, when you guys played Howard and Brendan Sullivan was under center, not really a ton of run-pass balance, very favored toward the ground. If Sullivan is the starter on Saturday, how do you guys kind of plan to create more confusion for offenses and, I guess, build less off of the run game and be a little more balanced? Yeah, no,
I think it comes down to just creating balance, staying ahead of the sticks, and I think so much that really comes down to, you know, something that I've challenged our entire team on is our pre-snap procedure. And the things that we can control, or whether that's defensively, all 11 being on the same page, or offensively, you know, making sure that, you know, from communication to the sideline, to our team, to our pre-snap procedure, to make sure that, man, everything is perfect before the snap of the football. Offensively, when we stay ahead of the chains, I think naturally some of that balance that we're all looking for naturally happens. When you avoid 2nd and 12, 3rd and 11, naturally there's just more balance, and it's more difficult to call a defense in those situations. I think when that consistently happens, you'll see that. And when you go back and study the Howard film, in our drives where we stayed ahead of the chains, really good things happen. When we found ways to hurt ourselves through penalties or negative plays, TFL sacks, it was hard for us to catch our rhythm.
Coach, you talked about closing out games after the Howard game, right? And I feel like you just touched on it there with shooting yourselves in the foot, right? How do you get out to that lead but hold that lead, especially in the outside environment like Nebraska?
Well, that's a great question. I think it really comes down to our level of focus and our level of urgency in everything that we're doing. And, you know, it's easy to say those things. You know, how are we embodying that in our practice habits? How are we embodying that in a meeting environment? You know, how am I embodying that in terms of the way that I carry myself as the head coach, whether it be on the sideline or at halftime or carrying over into the third and fourth quarter? I mean, you could see it very, very plainly on Friday with, Colorado, Stanford. You know, Colorado, very good football team that's playing at a high level, jumps out to a big lead in the first half, isn't able to close out. I mean, it can happen in all areas of college football, and it's just something that, got to continue to challenge myself and our entire team to approach every opportunity, whether it be practice, meetings, or game day, with just a certain level of urgency and focus on all the details.
Coach, you've talked a lot this season about writing your own story as a team. To you thus far through 6 games, what have the themes of this story been?
I think it's been a resilient group, a group that's continued to, pour into one another and care for one another. And I think it's a group that, understands that, the people that they've worked so hard with over the course of the off season, over the course of the summer, over the course of fall camp, over the course of ups and downs along the first half of this season. Those are the people that they need to continue to pour into. And, I've really challenged the group entering into the second half. All the goals and aspirations that this group has for themselves, the story that they hope to write, all that's still right in front of them. And now this is an opportunity as we enter into the second half, specifically the third quarter, to go set the stage for the things that will be ahead of us in the second half of the season.
Coach, what do you feel like is the beauty of the second half of the season, or what's the difference between starting the season versus getting that bye week and now into it?
I think it's an opportunity for us to, reflect back on what we've experienced, take full ownership in the things that, we need to continue to build off of that have been positives, but also challenge ourselves in areas where we need to improve. Speaking to some of the questions of evaluating myself, what a great opportunity for me to continue to improve on, my clock management, my communication with our staff, continuing to hone in on some of the details that need to happen with me calling the defense and being the head coach. Same thing for our players. The beauty of it is we get to look back, take full ownership in where we're at, and then set the course moving forward. I think you have a group that's really hungry, really excited, and eager to attack this week of practice.
You brought up the ability to recruit over the bye week. Seems like the team has really started to hit its stride in that aspect. Got commitments from Tito Williams and Aiden Newbill a couple weeks ago. What do you think has started to help the team kind of pick back up the momentum on that front again?
We talk about telling a story. At the end of the day, recruiting is presenting a story, and just giving young men and their families thorough information. And I think the story that exists here at Northwestern is a really special story to tell. It's some of the best academics a young man could find, a degree that has an opportunity to set a young man up for the rest of his life, playing in the Big Ten, doing that within incredible facilities surrounded by a bunch of coaches that are going to pour into you in a developmental program. I think there's a story to tell there. And I think what you're seeing is young men and their families realizing that even though there's a certain level of uncertainty, we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on the things that we can, continue to commit to here at Northwestern. And that's an opportunity to play in the Big Ten and an opportunity to do it at one of the best institutions you can find.
Coach, obviously Coach Rhule went into a very similar situation you at Baylor when he got there. Have you guys had a chance to speak about those kind of adversities that you've both faced as head coaches?
We haven't, but tremendous amount of respect for Coach Rhule and the way that he built that program up at Baylor. And, I've observed him from afar for a long time. Tremendous amount of respect for the way that he, coaches the game, mentors young men, and knows how to build a program.
Coach Xander Mueller has kind of been a big playmaker for your defense this year. He leads you guys tackles for loss, sacks, and also tied for the lead in interceptions. What can you say about his play and just kind of the linebacker position, being a focal point and creating some havoc on defense?
I just, I'll start by saying I just love the way that young man approaches practice. I mean, the energy he brings every single day. There's a consistency there. There's a focus there. And, we've talked about ownership here multiple times over the course of the last few minutes. Xander Mueller is someone that fully embraces and invites coaching. You know, a lot of that growth that we've seen out of Xander is the fact that, you know, he's taken coaching from Coach McGargle. He's accepted that. He's invited that. He's taken full ownership on things that he needs to improve within his game. And it's pretty fun to see that showing up in the production we've seen out of him this year.
Coach, people have asked about the run game and how you're going to approach Nebraska's run game. Is there the bye week gives the team a chance to recuperate, right? Is that even more important to let the bodies recuperate, especially when it's going to be a run game where there's going to be even more emphasis on the body?
Absolutely. You know, we tried to find this really healthy balance between continuing to push and improve and prepare for Nebraska, but while also giving our guys, you know, ample time to recover and get their bodies back. You know, I really feel like in our planning we were able to accomplish that, and it's pretty excited to get back to practice today and tomorrow and ramp this thing back up. But at the end of the day, you know, Nebraska specifically defensively has done some incredible things in stressing their opponents, and you know, really excited about the plan that Coach Bajaki and Coach Anderson and the rest of that offensive staff is putting together for our guys.
Coach, going back to recruiting for a little bit, how have you handled that added workload? Again, you're coming in with so much to do on the field as an interim. Now you have off the field, and of course you have recruiting experience as a defensive coordinator. But moving up to a Power 5 level, how have you handled that added workload and doing it as an interim?
You know, it just leaned into relationships, genuine relationships, and at the end of the day, you know, gonna bust my tail, put every fiber of my being into, you know, supporting our current players, serving our current players, and putting them at the forefront of all of our decision making, while also making sure that I'm being a great steward of this program. And you know, how do you do that? You identify, you know, young men across the country that you feel fit the profile here at Northwestern, that love football, that value a Northwestern degree that you feel like, you know, in due time can be developed into great Big Ten football players, and then you tell a story. But a story of truth, what truly exists here. And, you know, we're doing that through genuine relationships. We're doing that through, you know, just telling them the truth of what this looks like moving forward. And clearly you're starting to see a bunch of young men and their families, you know, deem that as something that they want to be a part of moving forward.
Coach, just to follow up on Matt's question, what is your message to recruits about, because you don't even know what your stats will be here when they enroll in the university next year. Will you tell these recruits to say that the people who recruit them will be here whether or not they get here?
It's the same thing that, you know, my wife and I have committed to, that, and the same thing that we tell our players, you know, control the controllables. You know, what do you know? Well, Northwestern offers one of the best degrees somebody can find. We're playing in the Big Ten. This program has been rooted in the holistic development and mentoring of young men, you know, as far as we can remember. You know, certainly trust that that's going to be the case moving forward. And, you know, whoever holds this position as head coach moving forward, those are things that you can count on. And if you know, young men and their families want to come back with more direct, you know, questions for me, you know, in terms of my status, I just continue to tell them I'm going to focus on the things I can control, and that's supporting our players, serving our players, and busting my tail to make sure that we have an opportunity to write the story that we've continued to talk about.
David Braun, as he has been since getting the job, open and honest on his growth as a head coach. He says, quote, "I feel like I've grown exponentially. Your greatest growth comes in situations of adversity. There's a lot of growth left. Great group around me, and I continue to assess ways that I can improve." Nebraska Northwestern, 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 local time here on Big Ten Network. Saturday, coming up on Tuesday, 3 more head coaches. Ryan Day, James Franklin. Fittingly, we'll go back-to-back during the Tuesday press conference edition of Big Ten Live at 2 Eastern, 1 Central Time. And Kirk Ferentz, Hawkeyes, coming off a huge win. Those 3 coaches will be with us on Tuesday.